The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and we are webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. We're going to be with you live for the next 3 hours talking about autism and how to be the most effective, efficient member of a team working with a child on the autism spectrum. Whether you're a parent, a teacher, a practitioner, we know that that's something that's really important to you, and I want you to know that it's really important to me. We have a lot to talk about today. There's a lot that we want to go over, and we're going to have a really special guest with us during the 11 o'clock hour. Vince Redmond will be here with us, and it's always a treat when Vince gets an opportunity to be here because not only does he have an extensive background in ABA, something that we talk about a lot here, applied behavior analysis, because it's the only scientifically proven effective treatment for autism. That's why we talk about ABA, and because it's a huge topic that there's a lot to know if we want to be that most effective, efficient member of a child's team. But Vince is also a marriage and family counselor, therapist, I don't know exactly what the term is. So he looks at things from a very unique perspective that can really help us on this journey. He's got that experience counseling an entire family, and he also has experience with ABA and helping children on the autism spectrum reach their fullest potential. So he's a wonderful, compassionate soul and a great resource, and we're going to be talking with him at 11 o'clock. I was going to say this afternoon. We're here till noon. I don't know where I am. It's Tuesday. I don't know. You know, I could use that excuse yesterday when it was Monday, but it's Tuesday now. I'm supposed to have it together. In any case, the show is live, right? So with all of our mistakes, especially my mistakes, out there for all of you to see. It's real life. It's how it is in our lives, right? I said we're going to be talking about ABA, and so you might mistakenly think that I'm somebody who is an expert in ABA. Au contraire, my friends. I am not an expert in ABA. I am a mom. My son had intensive ABA in our home for 5 years, so I know a soupçon. I don't know, I'm French today. I know just a little bit about ABA because of our experience. But what I do know about ABA is that it is effective. The Surgeon General has called it the gold standard in treatment for autism. I refer to it as the autism miracle in my living room because at 3, I had a child who had lost virtually all of his skills. He had been speaking, but he regressed into autism and was virtually nonverbal at 3. And 2 weeks after his 3rd birthday, we started ABA therapy with the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and I got my child back. So I'm a huge fan of ABA, and I'm an even bigger, if that's possible, fan of parents who want to help their children to reach their fullest potential. And having been somebody who went through this, I can tell you that it's a difficult road, a really difficult road, one that takes a great deal of patience, a great deal of time. It's one where you're going to encounter a great deal of stress and 1 or 2 crises. Usually they're going to be of the funding nature, sometimes of another nature along the way. And I want to help you to find a way to manage the stress, to get over the hurdles, to find the funding, and get down to the business at hand, helping our kids to reach their fullest fullest potential. That's what it's about. That's what we're here for. I'm here to talk to you about what's possible. And I hope that you will tell me what you need to make your dreams become possible. So to that end, there are a lot of different ways that you can converse with us on the show. If you are watching us on autism-live.com, then you will see on your screen it says either live or rebroadcast. If it says live, then you have a box there that says questions, and you can type in right now. It's active, it's hot. If you type in your question, hit enter, it will appear magically right here on my screen. And it doesn't cost you anything. There is nothing that you need to log into. You're just going to type into that question box and hit enter. If you want to ask a question of Vince while he's here, you can do that, and I can pose the question to him in real time. You can give us suggestions, your comments. Just tell us where in the world you're watching from. Tell us about your child. We'll be happy to share any information that's appropriate here on the show and to hunt down answers to your questions and concerns that you have. That's really what I'm about, is being that conduit. I'm not the expert, but I want to hook you up to the experts that we have the ability to contact, and we have the ability to contact a lot of people here. So that's a wonderful thing, and it's all on your behalf. Now, if you're watching autism-live.com and it says rebroadcast, then that means you're watching a show that was aired live previously and is now being rebroadcast. But you can still get in touch with us, and we're going to tell you some of the different ways that you can get in touch with us when you're watching us in rebroadcast or on another site. And we'll start to flash some of those on the screen for you. Of course, one of the easiest way to get a hold of us is through email. No matter what time of day and night it is where you are, you can send us an email with your question. We'll be happy to pose your question to the appropriate expert as soon as we come back into the office. And if need be, if it's appropriate for you, unless you ask us not to, we'll cover it on the live show, and we'll send you a typewritten response. I think it's a great way to participate, because not only were you going to get the answers and get your needs met, but it also helps other people who are watching. Sometimes in the beginning, you don't even know what question to ask, right? I mean, in the beginning, I didn't know to ask, hey, is ABA effective for autism? Because I didn't know about ABA. So sometimes when you ask a question, you help educate somebody else about the questions there are to ask. It's a great way to really not only help yourself and help your child, but help everyone around the world. And we are viewed around the world. We're in like 84 countries and all 50 states in the United States. You gotta love that. Love the fact that you guys are tuning in and getting the information that you need. If you aren't somebody who particularly likes email, you more like speaking, I don't type fast enough, even though I'm taking a typing class this summer with my son. But I tend to want to speak. And you couldn't guess by the fact that I'm here for 3 hours talking, right? So I prefer the phone. When in doubt, I prefer the phone. If you'd like to phone in, you can be patched right in here to the studio. You and I can have a conversation. I can't tell you how much I would enjoy that. And you can phone in with your question. We can chat away. That's during the live show. If you call us when it's not the live show, you'll either get someone on the phone who'll be happy to talk to you, or if it's after hours, you will get a recording. So you can leave your recording for us. We'll listen to it when we come back into the office, and we will talk about it in the next available live show, and we'll also give you a call back. By the way, we also seriously, I can't talk today. We accept Skype phone calls. If you want to Skype into the show from anywhere around the world, last week we did an international call, so we know it works. From anywhere around the world, you can ask your questions, talk to the experts, and if you've got video capability, you can bring that up, and we can bring it up, and your face can be right here, right by mine and the experts here on Autism Live. So feel free to Skype in. You can also participate by talking to us on Facebook. We have a brand new Facebook page, Autism Live. Give us a like while you're there. But you can answer question of the day there, pose questions, offer concerns, topics that you would like to see more of, what's working for you, what you're mad about, what your feelings are, post things that are relevant. We really want it to be a great resource page there. So check us out on our Facebook page. And by the way, you can also tweet with us. We really enjoy that. That's new technology for me, but I'm finding my way on Twitter. And I mentioned that there are many different ways to watch us. If you're watching us on autism-live.com, that's great. And we not only webcast live 3 hours a day, Monday through Friday, from 9 a.m. to noon Pacific Standard Time, but then we replay episodes. So we're on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There's always something happening here on Autism Live. We're always here to support you. But we also show the shows on many other sites. You could be watching us on blip.tv. That's a wonderful way to watch, especially if you want to watch something specific. So if you say to yourself, you know, I just want to know about toilet training. That's what I got going on in my house right now. And so you go to Blip TV and you type in search on Autism Live for toilet training, and you can see the different episodes that come up with toilet training. We did a great interview last week with Angela Persicki, and a couple of weeks ago we did another interview on toileting that I can think of that we did with Dr. Amy Kenzer. So, and we talk about toileting from time to time because, you know, it's one of those things. If you don't have it, you wish you did, and if you have it, you go woohoo, right? And it's very possible to fix it. So check out those interviews and get on the track to being diaper free. It's so exciting. By the way, there are other places you can be watching us. We have our very own YouTube channel. Wonderful to watch things there. You can pause, rewind, search for topics. You say, I want to watch, you know, Wednesday's episode because I know they do Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy, and I really love that Nancy Allspaw Jackson and the guests that they have on then. It can get wild and crazy here in the studio on Wednesdays. So you can go and find all the Let's Talk Autism episodes on the YouTube channel. It's a wonderful way to watch. And when something happens and your kids finish therapy or they come home from school, you can pause it and come back to it where you left off. It's a great way to watch. You can also download our entire episodes on iTunes for free. It's a free download to you. I keep promising you, but I swear it's coming, the audio-only version on YouTube. But right now you get picture and sound. It's a great way to watch. Again, free. And you can also be watching us on Ustream, another fabulous way to be catching our show. Hey, if there's a way that you would like to see us that isn't on that list, would you do me a favor and let us know? Because we want to be available to you in the format that would be conducive to you. All right. So that's how you can watch us, how you can interact with us, because really this show is meant to be interactive. And we like to start every morning interactive with the jargon of the day. This is the time of day when we take on those words, phrases, and anagrams that just about drive us batty, right? You think, okay, I didn't pick this, but my child's been diagnosed with autism. I'm going to do everything that I can. I'm going to be the best possible member of this team. I get it that it's going to take a team, but I get it that there's progress to be had. Now tell me what to do, and they give you a stream of jargon that you couldn't possibly understand. And you go, really? Really? That's helpful? And then you say, I just didn't understand what you said. Could you explain that to me? And then they give you another stream of jargon, and you go, running into the street with your hair on fire. You don't have to do that. We're going to take it one word, one phrase, one anagram at a time, simplify it, give you an actual definition, simplify it some more, give you context for it, and a little bit at a time, we'll all start to make friends with this confounded jargon. Believe me, it happens over time, and you need to. It's required. So let's take a look at what today's phrase is. It is conditioned reinforcer. Right? What in the hey nanny nanny? Let's take a look at our actual definition. A previously neutral stimulus that now functions as a reinforcer because of prior pairings with one or more established reinforcers, sometimes also known as secondary or learned reinforcer. I'm so glad we could have this talk because I'm sure you understand it now, right? I don't know about you, but when I was just starting out, I would have been like, huh? Don't get it. All right, so let's talk about our working definition. Something that now functions as a reward because you repeatedly paired it with an item or activity that your child already loves. So when we talk about ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis, rule number one is, and this is true for all of us, not just for our kids with autism, that in order for any behavior to be done over and over and over and over and over again is for it to be in some way reinforcing. Think about it. all the things that you do in life, anything that you do every single day, almost religiously, right? You do it because there is some sort of payoff for you. The payoff could be lots of different things, but there is some sort of meaningful payoff to you, or you wouldn't do it. Right? Isn't that true? Think about anything that you do. If you're somebody who gets up and jogs every morning, bless you. I want to find a way to make it meaningfully rewarding to me. It's not happening. But if I could find a way for it to be really, truly meaningfully reinforcing to me, I would get up and do it every single morning. And I'm working on that. And sometimes it's really hard because to find something that is reinforcing to somebody is difficult in a lot of cases. And in the case of our children with autism, it is particularly difficult sometimes. You know, a typically developing child finds playing with a toy really reinforcing. They've got their little toy and they're banging on their piano and it's making all this noise and they're like, oh, it's so wonderful. I'm having such a good time. They're getting a big bang out of it. We put that in front of a child with sensory issues on the autism spectrum, and it's either boring, you know, or it's like painfully noisy and they go, and cry. Well, there are a lot of things in life that we want for our kids to find enjoyment in. Certainly one of them is play. Another one is finding enjoyment in people and finding enjoyment in praise and finding enjoyment in being held and finding enjoyment in, you know, everybody clapping their hands when the child does something that's wonderful. Some of our kids on the spectrum don't like that. Think about all the things that you would like for your child to find reinforcing. How about finding it reinforcing to speak to you? How about finding it reinforcing for them to have a conversation back and forth? And it may be that at this moment in time, your child doesn't find that reinforcing. Well, there's something that your child finds reinforcing. And what we can do is utilize that and pair it with the thing that you want them to find reinforcing. So what we see a lot of times is that when we start working with a child, you're gonna like interview the parents. If you're the parent, you're gonna think to yourself, okay, what makes my child light up now? It could be bubbles. It could be being tickled. It could be being chased. It could be letting them chase you. It could be cartoons. It could be playing with a shiny object, right? But there's always something, and a lot of times our kids will, what we call perseverate. They like really get obsessive about something like a train or, for my son, it was vacuum cleaners and drains. He was obsessed with vacuum cleaners and drains. So we kind of do this check-in where we think, okay, what does this kid love? And then we're going to use that and pair other things with it. So that every time the child is getting to engage in this thing that they love, my son also loved pirates and sword fighting. So every time he would be sword fighting, they would be using praise and other things that previously were not reinforcing to my child. And things like eye contact, right? And praise, always with the praise. We always want to pair praise because eventually we're going to stop to give the reinforcer and just give the praise. And that is going to now be reinforcing because over and over and over again, we paired the praise with the thing that was really reinforcing. If your child loves hot dogs, then we're going to ask the child to do something. We're going to give them a piece of hot dog and we're going to go, yay! Eventually, we're going to give smaller and smaller pieces of hot dogs and keep going, yay! And eventually, you're going to see your child enjoying the yay because they got the hot dog that they love with every yay. That is a conditioned reinforcer. We made it reinforcing. So I know a lot of times you guys write in and say, I'm confused. My child only likes one thing. Start pairing it with everything you want them to find reinforcing over and over, one thing at a time or two things at a time because you really want them to get it. And you will see that your child will get reinforced by praise. Your child will be reinforced by a hug. Your child will be reinforced by tickles. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. That's conditioned reinforcer. Okay. We also always have a question for you, a question of the day. And our question today is, what is your family's favorite summer meal? You guys have already checked on Facebook, and you guys are answering this in huge droves. I think it's so funny. People love to talk about food. I love to talk about food. I'm a foodie. I admit it. So really want to hear from you guys. And no judgments, right? We're going to do our healthy eating tip later on, and then we'll talk about what's advisable to eat. But no judgments. What's the guilty pleasure in the summer? I have to say that my son really likes chicken legs. So we have chicken legs that we cook in lots of different ways, and but his new favorite thing are fish sticks. There's a kind of fish stick that he can have that doesn't have any of the allergy things that he's allergic to, and so a big favorite thing is to have watermelon, right? And he likes to have his fish sticks and either corn on the cob or French fries. For the longest time, he couldn't eat either one of those things, and now he can have them in small amounts. So healthy French fries, right? Or corn on the cob. And of course, the corn is organic and non-GMO, right? Because mommy's that way. And, that's a really good time. And his favorite thing to drink is some pink lemonade that is more fizzy water with a little bit of lemon juice and a little bit of blood orange in it. So it's more like a tinted bubble water. But we put a straw in it that's got the bendy straw and a little umbrella in it. And that's a good time at my house. It's amazing how it's the small things in life that make us happy, right? It's reinforcing to him. I know that when I do the little bendy straw and the little paper umbrella, that he knows it's a special occasion and that he's special and that mommy loves. It's very reinforcing. So it's amazing the kinds of things that we can do for our families that make them happy. But I'd love to hear from you guys. What's your family's favorite meal in the summer? And you guys have already been writing in. I can't wait to, in the next hour, look at more of those and see what you guys pick. It'll give us all ideas, right? Oh, we also love blood orange popsicles. We're really into the blood oranges because we don't do the artificial colors, and we make popsicles out of blood oranges. They're fabulous. Okay, we also always have a topic of the day for you. The topic of the day has really morphed into the topic of the week. And our topic this week is managing stress, because it's a part of this deal, right? We can't get away from it. We can run, but we cannot hide. So you got to manage it. You got to have a plan to manage the stress. You got to have an understanding that it's there. It's there, and it's gonna be there. And they've done countless studies on the fact that, golly gump 'em, Batman, autism is stressful for the parents. I know it's shocking. We're all really shocked by it, but the truth is that it is, and we have scientific data to back it up. I don't know that we needed that, but we do, and it has a cost to us if we don't manage it. So it's really important. I don't think there's a group of people who want more to be there for their kids long term, right? Isn't it all of our biggest fear that something's going to happen to us and what will happen to our child? So we have to manage the stress. So we're going to talk about that throughout the day, how we can get ourselves into a place where we know that our kids are being helped and that we don't have to be at the stress level here always. You can only do what you can only do, right? And we want to help you so you don't have to reinvent the wheel whenever you've got an issue. Okay, to that end, some of the different things that we're going to talk about today, I mentioned the healthy eating tip. We have a cognition tip for you, and Vince Redmond, I mentioned earlier, is going to be joining us in the studio. He is a marriage and family therapist and also has more than 20 years of experience with ABA, with children with autism. He is a wonderful resource. You're going to want to listen to what he has to say, and you're going to feel free to ask questions in whichever way is conducive for you. We are going to take a short break, and when we come back, we have a motor tip for you, the motor tip of the week, so stick with us.
Skills is a revolutionary web-based program that incorporates comprehensive assessment, curriculum design, progress tracking, and treatment evaluation for children with autism all in one place. Developed by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. Our approach is based on over 40 years of research on the principles of learning and their application to improving the lives of children with autism. How does Skills work? Created with speed and simplicity in mind, Skills was modeled on an easy 3-step process. Step 1. Start assessment. Step 1 begins with our intelligent assessment system, which consists of a series of questions. This assessment is essential to identifying your child's level of skills compared to their typical peers across all areas of development. This includes assessing social, motor, language, adaptive, play, cognition, executive functions, and academic skills. Every skill has an assigned age which indicates when the skill emerges during typical development. This means that each child is automatically presented only with lessons that are relevant to his or her age. Step 2. Choosing activities. It's now easier than ever to build an individualized treatment plan. In Step 2, you are presented with an individualized pool of activities that are directly linked to your student's assessment results. Each activity represents a specific skill that has been indicated by the assessment as needing to be taught. Activities are categorized by curriculum and then by lesson. There are 3 main types of skills: building blocks, fundamental, and expansion skills. Fundamental skills are necessary for successful everyday functioning. Building blocks are prerequisites to a fundamental skill. Expansion skills are non-essential skills, but may provide further enrichment in certain areas. After reviewing the activities available to you, you can quickly add your chosen activities to the treatment plan by simply checking the box and clicking the button. Step 3. Start treatment. Once you have selected and added the activities you want, you are ready to begin teaching. Skills provides you with all the tools necessary to design and manage an effective curriculum plan, such as printable activity guides that are customizable by the teacher, supplemental teaching aids including printable data sheets, teaching guides, visual aids, worksheets, and tracking forms, detailed IEP goals and benchmarks for each activity, brief and visually appealing video tutorials, a variety of treatment progress and clinical timeline charts, and lots more. And since Skills is completely web-based, everything you need is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in one easy-to-access location. Skills users even benefit from unlimited access to a support community where they can ask questions and share ideas with a skills expert. Skills is always with you.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. We're about to do the motor tip of the week, but as we've been talking about this week, if you're in the state of California, you know that insurance reform is the law. It has been enacted now as of July 1st, and there are a lot of questions that you guys have. Want to let you know that we want to be a resource for you to getting those questions answered, and the Center for Autism and Related Disorders is about to launch a series of webinars around the state where you can go and hear experts talk and get questions answered too face-to-face. And sometimes, because we all have different circumstances, sometimes that face-to-face is really what you crave, right? So, got some upcoming dates that I want to take a minute and tell you about in different places around the state. In Fresno, Saturday, July 28th, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., there will be an autism insurance funding seminar. It will take place at the CARD headquarters, or the CARD office there on Clinton Way. And if you need more information about where that is, you can visit www.centerforautism.com and click on the locations tab, go to the Fresno office. Then on Friday, August 3rd in the evening from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., the Sacramento office. Again, that's Sacramento, Friday, August 3rd from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., the CARD office there on Ramco Street. How about in Lafayette? If you're in Lafayette, you can go on Saturday, August 4th. There will be one from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. at the Lafayette office on Mount Diablo Boulevard. If you're in Garden Grove, there will be a seminar on Saturday, August 11th from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. on the Lewis Street, at the Lewis Street office in Garden Grove. Again, that's Saturday, August 11th for Garden Grove. Here in Tarzana, where at the headquarters, there will be one on Saturday, August 18th from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. That is right here in the same building from which we webcast, here in Tarzana on Ventura Boulevard. And then in San Diego, there will be a seminar on Saturday, August 25th from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. at the office on Ronson Road in San Diego. If you would like more information about this, again, you can visit www.centerforautism.com. You can go to the locations tab and look at any of the specific addresses, but there, I believe there is a thing on the first page that says insurance funding seminars. And of course, you can write into us always. We're happy to give you more information, because information, boy, it's key, right? Sometimes it makes a difference in what kind of services you get. So be armed with information and attend these seminars. We'll tell you more about them as the weeks progress. I mentioned that it is time for our motor skills tip of the week. And, you know, it's summer. We all want a little bit of a break, right? And it's a great time to be working on things within a context that makes them fun, right? And we've talked before about motor skills and how there's 4 different arenas for the motor skills, right? There's gross motor, which is full body, the kind of big muscles when you're walking, you're running, you're jumping, you're kicking, any kind of team sport is going to be motor skills. Then there's the fine motor skills, where we're cutting and we're zipping and we're twisting and doing things with our fingers, right? I know a lot of kids are getting a lot of fine motor stuff with video games over the summer, right? But we also want to be working on handwriting and other things that have a little bit more finesse to their fine motor. Then there are also the visual motor things that aren't necessarily going to affect all of our kids, but for kids who need visual motor help, really important that we're working on those things over the summer. And then, of course, there is the oral motor. We've talked before about the fact that when a child comes out into the world, out of the womb and into the world, they do not have the physical capability to form words in a way that is intelligible. That's why we don't get any 5-day-old babies that say oscillating sprinkler, right? And that over time, children begin to make sounds and they strengthen their tongue, and nobody understands them for a period of time, but eventually, you know, mom and dad understand that when they say baba, they're, you know, saying dog, right? When I can remember my son, instead of saying fire truck, for some reason he said Baba Genie. Baba Genie. That was when he was finding his way to speaking as a 3-year-old. He would refer to the Baba Genie, and that meant fire truck. So if there was anybody else around who didn't understand that, you know, the gem to English dictionary, that Baba Genie meant fire truck, and he would say Indiana Jones for Indiana Jones, right? But that was him making an approximation because he didn't have the oral motor. When our kids have a speech delay, they not only have a problem with finding acquisition for language, but then once we start to get them caught up, we have to also get them caught up for oral motor. Because the truth is that until you can be understood, you're not going to find language reinforcing. So even though we're pairing other things with it and making it reinforcing for them to do the approximations, and we're rewarding them, we're rewarding a 4-year-old for saying Baba Genie because they're making the attempt, we got to get them caught up in terms of oral motor so that everybody can understand them, right? Really imperative that we're working on those kinds of things. Now, we can do dry little tongue twister kinds of things, but, really hard to make that reinforcing for a small child who has found speaking to be a challenge. I think it's a better thing, and of course, I always advocate that you guys use the skills program. That's what we use now at home. That gives you a full curriculum and gives you a bunch of lessons to do. I think for our kids, when they're behind in speech, pairing what they need to do in terms of oral motor with actual sound production is it's the best way you get a bang for your buck, right? So instead of just having the child make the tongue like this, we're also asking them to make, different sounds that go with having their tongue do that. But we still have to make it fun, right? We got to build the muscles and we have to make it fun. So my suggestion for the summer is to make this really fun. Have you ever seen the show Minute to Win It? It's not on anymore, and yet it was a really fun show, and they did some really crazy, silly things. But one of my favorite things that they would do is take a cookie and set it on somebody's forehead and make them have to race to do their face like this to make the cookie move. And once the cookie got down to their face, they could eat it. And they had to see who could do it in the fastest amount of time. And people won money for doing this, but it's a kind of funny thing. And then, of course, my family, we love to watch America's Funniest Home Videos. This is our Sunday night ritual, if for no other reason, to sit and watch my son dissolve into a puddle of giggles. But a couple of years ago, I don't know whether it was last year or the year before, the big $100,000 winner was a family who set up a camera, and it was like two sons and the grandma who laid back on the couch and had the cookie here, and they raced and made these silly faces to get the cookie to their mouth. Well, what a great thing to do with your child or your kids. Let's say you're having a picnic, you're having a barbecue, or it's just Tuesday at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and you need something fun to do with your child or your kids. You can do it without the video camera, but I think there's something really fun and reinforcing for a lot of our kids about a camera. And I said yesterday, one of the best investments you can have if you have a child on the autism spectrum is to get a really inexpensive little digital camera that you can go from pictures to video with a flick of a little thing. So helpful, because it can be very reinforcing for the kids. So you line them up on the couch and have some sort of food that's okay for your kids health-wise. And there are cookies that are healthy, right? Stick the cookie on their forehead and have them work out that oral motor, videotape it. Maybe you have a prize for whoever wins, or just the fun of having them see it on the videotape. You're going to get those muscles moving. And by the way, there are other funny things that you can do with food. If the child loves chocolate pudding, put the chocolate pudding over here and have them try to lick it off with their tongue. It strengthens the tongue. Try to put some on their nose and see if they can lick it off of their nose. Put it in a circle around their mouth and see if they can stick their tongue out and make the circle around their mouth. Get creative. If your child can't have chocolate pudding, do they like applesauce? You can do the same thing with applesauce. And if it's not a cookie, you can have them move their faces around in lots of different ways and encourage them to make sounds while they're doing it. You're going to strengthen the muscles, and that's what we need to do. That's our motor tip for the week. Check out the lessons on Skills too, because they've got great lessons and they've got a great deal for you right now. skillsglobal.com. Buy 1 month and you get the other 2 months of summer for free. Check it out. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to have the healthy eating tip for the week. Stick with us.
I'm Adele Nadowski, Director and Co-Creator of Skills. CARD eLearning is an online tool that has been developed by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. CARD eLearning is the training that is delivered to the ABA therapists at CARD to train them on the principles of applied behavior analysis and to equip them with the knowledge they need to essentially deliver the ABA-based techniques during their therapy with the children that they work with. ABA has been proven scientifically to be the most effective intervention for children with autism. At this point, even the Surgeon General has come out with a statement suggesting just that. So we know that this is something that children with autism definitely need if they're going to improve and live the lives that we're hoping that they're going to be able to live. By being able to train people on this one particular method that we know works, and to be able to have all of your staff within your school settings on the same page, it allows you to take more of a multidisciplinary approach, and there's definite consistency going on within the team. It makes sure that every person involved with that child's treatment program, including the speech and language pathologist, the occupational therapist, the teachers, the aides, all of these individuals to be able to be trained so that they can all work together effectively with the child. Parents that are using CARD eLearning can use it either to train themselves, and then after having done that they can implement different techniques with their child in order to teach new skills. But oftentimes parents might also be working either with an ABA provider, with a school, or they may have even hired their own therapist to deliver the intervention techniques. So CARD eLearning can be used either to collaborate with your school. It can also be used to train the therapists that are coming to the home of the parents, or it can also be shared with the ABA provider so that that provider can find out about it and perhaps implement it within their organization and train their staff. You can also do reporting for your organization. So you can actually look and find out which teachers are progressing, what their quiz scores are, and actually we can give you reports as well that will help you to compare the different teachers and their performances. CARD eLearning is really simple to use. You can log on to this as long as you have a computer, that's all you need, and an internet connection. And you can work on it any time of the day, anywhere that you're at. When you log on, you realize that right away. First of all, on the top of the page, there's a navigational tutorial. It's a how to use this page button. Simply by watching that video, it'll all kind of unfold in front of you, and it becomes extremely self-explanatory. CARD eLearning has 9 modules, and you can basically go through those at your own pace. You're going to be watching videos that are kind of like a storyboard with narration, but in addition to that, there's many different video clips of therapists actually implementing the techniques that are being described within the storyboard that you can also watch. And then of course you're able to pause, you're able to type notes right directly underneath the video that you're watching. You can save your notes, you can review them, and between each module you do take a quiz, and once you pass that quiz you can go on to the next module. And then after you complete all of them, you have a final exam. And by completing the final exam and passing with a score of 85% or better, you will be given a certificate of completion. Let me show you how easy it is to use CARD eLearning.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod, and it is time for our healthy eating tip of the week. And you know, I went to a festival not too long ago, and I thought it was really interesting. They had a booth. It was a literacy festival for all kids, but they had a booth, and I don't remember whether it was the local hospital, but they had a bin of plastic play fruit, and they had these plates. You know, paper plates, and the kids would come up to the booth, and each booth was supposed to have an activity for the kids. And I found this really interesting because they gave each child a plate, just a plain white plate, and they said, take food from this bin of plastic food, every imaginable plastic food thing that you could think of, and make what you think a good healthy meal would be on the plate. And it was so fascinating to me because kids were putting, you know, like a hamburger with a bun, and they were putting French fries on it, or chicken nuggets. There were chicken nuggets there. And they, you know, astoundingly, the plates were predominantly carbohydrates with a little bit of protein, and that was it. There was no vegetable that I could see on any kid's plate except for my kids. And there was no fruit on anybody's plate. Nobody was making those choices. And then once the children, in order to get a sticker, so they would make this plate and they would hand it in to somebody, and then the person would give them another plate. And on the plate, it would be cut into thirds, 3 different segments, and they would say, now we want you to go back, and what's going to make a healthy plate for you is to put a protein in 1/3 and a carbohydrate in 1/3 and a fruit or vegetable in the other third. And so here, now go do it the right way, right? And so the kids went back and they had to think this through. Now you saw these kids scratching their heads and going, right? And these were, sometimes 3-year-olds, but sometimes 12-year-olds were standing there doing this. And if they got it right, they got, a little reinforcer. There was a sticker that they got, and I think they may have gotten a toothbrush or something else to go with that. So they were willing to do it. They were going to get, they may have given them candy. I don't know. How ironic would that be? But in any case, it was just fascinating to me. And I remember I was there with a bunch of families and adults, and I was looking at these kids and going, that's so interesting. And of course, my kid, they handed him the plate, and he was the only one apparently all day that handed them back a plate that had a protein, a carb, and a vegetable on the plate. And he didn't have to get the plate in thirds, because it's something that we talk about all the time. But even my husband was there, and he goes, really? Are you supposed to have all 3 of those things with every meal? And I said, well, yeah. and there were a couple of other couples and families that were there that the husbands and the wives were like, wow, I never really thought of it that way. And I thought, well, shame on me for thinking that this is something that everybody already knows about. I just thought that it was something that people thought of. And what I see overwhelmingly when anybody asks me about, how do I plan a healthy meal for my child, that those are always the terms in which I'm talking about them. Well, what's the protein, what's the carb, and what's the vegetable, and what's the ratio between them? Because it really needs to be those 3 things. And of course, I do think that, fruit is a very important part of everyone's diet. And I think that goes hand in hand with the vegetables. But I really encourage people to think of, the thirds and then fruit as something on top of it. I really think of that as the dessert, I'll be honest with you. And again, I'm not a nutritionist, but I know that my kid eats a really healthy diet, and he enjoys it. He finds it really reinforcing. And one of the rules that we have in our house is that, he gets his meal. And by the way, go to my Facebook. I take pictures of what my kid eats all the time. It's like this weird thing that I enjoy doing. I try to make it pretty. I have blue plates for him, and because I want it to be reinforcing, right? And I'm all the time taking pictures of what my kid eats. So check out my timeline on Facebook, and you'll see that, it's one of my pastimes. I like taking pictures of food, and I'm particularly happy if I see, I made that really pretty, I'll go and take a picture of it. Sometimes I'm uninspired, but sometimes it's really pretty. And you should see that it's pretty much those thirds: the protein, the vegetable, and a carb. Sometimes on a lunch on Sunday, I'm a little less on the carb. I got to be honest, because on Sunday mornings we go to the farmer's market and he fruits it up. They have all these samples that they do of fruit. So if you see one that doesn't have the carb, it's probably because he had a whole lot of fruit prior to it. But in any case, really important, and our rule is always, because my son will crave more of the protein or more of the carb usually. Very unusual that he asks for more vegetables, but our rule always is that you don't ask for more of something on the plate until all 3 areas are taken care of. If all 3 areas are taken care of, then you can ask for more, but it usually means you're going to get more of the other things as well. So if he's got chicken and he's got rice and he's got an array of colorful vegetables that are there, sometimes he starts with the vegetables. If it's something that has tomatoes in it, he loves tomatoes, and he'll start with that, and then he moves on to the protein, then the carb, and then the rest of the vegetable left over. sure. But usually he doesn't start with the vegetables. I have to be honest about that. He very rarely asks for more of the vegetables. It's usually the protein or the carb or both of them together that he wants more of. So, but he knows that if he's going to get more protein, he's going to get more vegetable, and that he's going to need to eat everything that he asked for. So not to the point of being abusive, right? But I try not to give him so much that he's not going to be able to do it. So think about it, and when you're stumped about what to make for a meal, because a lot of times I know I'm that way, you know, it's 4:30 and I go, oh, I got nothing started for dinner, and I know he's going to be saying, I'm hungry any minute now. I really do think about, okay, well, what's the protein that I've got? What vegetable can I do? And what carb can I do? And if there's a way that you can put them all together, fabulous, right? They don't have to all be separate on the plate, but there's a wonderful dish that I do in the summer because it's really, really quick that because my son is gluten-free, because he does have, he needs to be, special consideration. But so I have some wonderful brown rice noodles that take only a few minutes to cook. They're very thin, and I can throw some salmon in there and some kind of vegetable like pea pods, and I got a whole meal in one pan, and he loves it. Put a little tamari sauce on that, grate a little ginger on that. Woohoo! It's fabulous. You can even add some chicken broth to it or some vegetable broth to it, make it a little soupier. Wonderful, wonderful. It can be served hot, it can be served cold. Spectacular, easy to do. Okay, that's our healthy eating tip for the day. Think in terms of that plate cut in 3 individual little areas there. And you will find that it's easier to prepare a meal and that it's infinitely healthier. All right, stick with us. We're going to be back more with Autism Live in just a few minutes.
Mostly the behavior started at night, but it was invading the day, where he would just speak one syllable and babble and pace around.
When she was a year old, she lost speech. She did never seem to request me for anything, even for food. He told me over the phone that I should just put her in an institution. I was devastated. I was an institution, a hospital. Yeah, isn't that nice?
He told me that it was possible or likely that Ruffin would never be employed, that he would never work productively, that he would not know that I loved him, nor would he love me, nor would he be likely to marry.
There's a 50% chance that he won't be able to talk at all, but if he does talk, he will only be able to, you know, make simple desire requests, I want, things like that. And probably by the time he was 10, he'd be in a home.
Doreen told me that he would recover, and Doreen told me that he would go to regular kindergarten.
I really have a very normal kid now, and lots of normal worries, but not extraordinary ones.
My name is Deli Popola, and I'm one of the creators of TheOutSpot.com. TheOutSpot.com is an online support system for families and specialists who are affected by autism across the whole world. Share inspirational stories, find resources in their area. Hope you can join.
Welcome back to Autism Live. If you've been watching the show this week, you know that we've had a couple of things to say about the rapper 50 Cent and his comments that he recently made on his Twitter that were objectionable at the very least, offensive, certainly, towards our children and our community. We shared with you the comments that he made on that site. We shared with you the wonderful words of Holly Robinson Peete, an awesome autism mom, and and her call to ask him to please refrain from making such comments. She was so eloquent and wonderful. We also reported to you yesterday about 50 Cent's apology over the weekend that he made for the comments. And I know in the last 48 hours or so, many of you have commented and said, gee, you know, this apology doesn't ring entirely sincere, and that it doesn't seem like enough in light of what happened, that Mr. 50 Cent is somebody who has arguably at least 8 million followers, and that to have such a voice and to have used it in such a way that the apology doesn't seem quite enough. And I can only imagine, I know that 50 Cent celebrated his 37th birthday, that he might be asking himself, well, what exactly do I need to do for people to feel that I'm sincere? Well, I'd like to offer a suggestion that sometimes people don't feel that an apology is sincere unless you literally put your money where your mouth is. And since your name is 50 Cent and you have 8 million followers, what if you were to give 50 cents for each one of your followers and donate it to the autism charity of your choosing? That would mean a cool $4 million, right? And how much good could $4 million do for the autism community? Now, if you don't know some good charities that could benefit from that kind of money, I'd like to add some further suggestions for you of some organizations who could really use some of that money. Of course, we can start with the Holly Rod Foundation, which Holly and Rodney Pete began, that helps so many families get services that they might otherwise not be able to afford. That's a wonderful organization. How about the Special Needs Network? This is an organization that helps to give families that are underserved, that underserved population that so desperately needs services, to help them to find the services and access to those services when they need them instead of having to wait. That's a wonderful organization. There's another one that's a favorite of mine, Autism Care and Treatment Today. They're a wonderful organization that gives grants to families for the kinds of things they need, whether they need a fence for a child that elopes, or whether they need help in paying for getting a diagnosis, or how about funding to bridge the gap between their insurance copay or their deductible so that they can get those services that are now available to them. That's a wonderful organization. How about Autism Speaks, which has been so important in creating important research and being absolutely instrumental in helping autism insurance reform to get to the place that it has. That'd be a wonderful organization. Or hey, because you're an artist, how about giving some funding to the Art of Autism? This is a wonderful organization that helps writers, helps performers, helps artists, helps filmmakers who are on the autism spectrum to get access to the materials and teachers they need so they can hone their craft. That would be a great thing. All of those organizations could benefit from some money. $4 million. You could split it amongst them, or there are hundreds, literally hundreds of other organizations that could really use your support. But hey, that's just my opinion. What do I know? I'm just an autism mom. I'm the mom of a young man who, by the way, likes music and has an autism spectrum diagnosis, and he is someone who has plans to be a rocket engineer because he wants to study the mysteries of man in the cosmos. By the way, his 9-year-old words, not mine. He's a wonderful kid, Mr. 50 Cent. There's a lot of wonderful, wonderful children on the autism spectrum, and they're counting on you to do the right thing. I hope you will. And that, my friends, is how Shannon sees it. Stay tuned for more Autism Live when we come back after these messages.
I am grateful for Autism Speaks because they allow families like me to have hope.
They're working towards having these children live better lives.
There's a space for you. Yeah, there's a world for you, and there's a community that is behind you.
And one that has really been able to be the singular voice for people who are involved with and who care about autism.
I do have autism, but I don't let that become a disability for me. Autism Speaks is going to continue to help those who need it, and just look at all the stuff they've done so far and you will be impressed.
3, 2, 1.
And you need to support the walks. We have to raise awareness, but we also have to raise funds to do the work.
I'm grateful for Autism Speaks for one main reason, is they are allowing me to focus on the research.
The work that Autism Speaks has been doing is critical for keeping autism research on the radar screen.
We proclaimed 2 April as the World Autism Awareness Day. I'm very proud of the UN and thankful Autism Speaks.
Getting the health mandate bill passed in New Jersey particularly, we needed to be able to make an argument, not just do this because it's the right thing to do, but do it because it's cost effective.
When everyone else told me nothing was wrong with my son, I got information from a website that told me something wasn't right.
I am so proud of Autism Speaks for creating these beautiful ad campaigns, which have reached people who are not affected by autism and have also created a greater climate of compassion and understanding.
It's been really great for Bachman to have gotten involved with Autism Speaks early on. I think everybody here feels like they really make a difference.
To make sure that we generate as much money as we can for Autism Speaks so we can all solve this puzzle together.
There's no way we could have come this far without our families, without our supporters to date, but there's so much farther we have to go. And everybody's invited to join this cause. We need all the help we can get to make the difference we know we can make.
Welcome back to Autism Live. It is that time of the day, one of my favorite times of the day, when we talk about the A word. This is the wonderful ongoing documentary being made by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, following a little boy, Jack Riley, who was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2, and he is turning 3 in this week's episode. He is a wonderful little boy who has had access to intensive ABA therapy in his home now for about 7 months, and we see a tremendous amount of progress happening. If this is your first time watching the show, I hope you'll go back and watch on their YouTube channel from the beginning to see where this child has come from. He's blossoming. He looks like a different child, and not just because he's getting a little bit older, but because his gaze falls in a different way. He's making some awesome eye contact, and by the way, really natural eye contact, not a fixed thing of looking at a person and staring at them, but when he talks to somebody, looking at them, when they say something, he glances at them and then goes back to what he's doing. Take a look at the eye contact that he's making. And not only that, today, our jargon of the day was conditioned reinforcer. This was a little boy who did not find it reinforcing when people jumped up and down and clapped and said good job or ruffled his hair, and now he does. He was a happy little boy before, but he's equally, if not more, happy now, and he's engaging in behaviors that allow him to be social. He's catching up. So let's take a look at what's going on with Jack Riley today. This is the A word.
Sun's coming up.
How do you spell apple? Jack?
A-P-P-L-E.
We went to the mall last night and got him some new shoes, and he rode the carousel, and I watched him for like a half hour, and you would never guess he wasn't like every other kid in there, except he was smaller than a lot of them. They run around with
That's so funny.
reckless abandon.
So funny.
That's so funny.
Hey, what color do you want? Look, I have green, yellow, and pink. What color? Yayo.
So what do you say?
Hi, yayo.
Yes, you can. Close. There we go. Oh! Uh-oh! Should we make him stand? Should we make him jump? Here, let's make him jump. Ready? Boink! Uh-oh! Look! What is that? See, it's a footprint.
It's a footprint.
It's a footprint. Cool, you want to do it again?
Take it!
While Jessica and Jack Riley are playing with Play-Doh, they are working on his fine motor skills. They include pincher grasp for picking up food, rotating the wrist for closing and opening the door. Having fine motor skills are needed for daily living tasks.
Oh, coolness! Wow!
Happy birthday!
Happy birthday! Whose birthday is it? Say it's my.
It's my
birthday. Say birthday.
Birthday.
Say
it's my birthday. It's my birthday.
Yeah. How old are you?
It's my.
I'm
3.
Yep. You're 3. Do this. Say 3.
3.
1, 2. Look. 3 fingers. Look. Right here. Look. 1, 2, 3. 3 fingers.
5 fingers.
Yeah, well, yeah, technically you do have 5. What is that?
I love it.
He's wearing a blue
hat
and a
green
hat and a
red hat
and a oops! He's not wearing a hat.
Yellow hat.
Yeah, it's a yellow hat. Red
shirt, blue shirt, yellow shirt, green shirt.
Yeah, oops! He's wearing it upside down. It's
a hippo and dog.
Good. It's
a rabbit and frog.
Good.
It's a pig and cow.
Very good.
I have a question for you. Why is tacting important?
Tacting is important because it helps with language and conversation too. When we first start off, we just have him identify labels.
It's a ladybug.
And then we move into frames, like adding article adjectives to it, like it's the dog. What is it? Say it's. Yeah, it's a chicken. And then now we're having him add 2 objects. So he has to say it's a blank and a blank.
It's a pig and cow.
Very good. And then we'll move on to like add adjectives in front of the words too. So he, like what he does already, he'll say like it's purple socks. It's a red shirt.
Yellow suit, blue suit, red suit.
Just to help expand his language skills a lot more. Let's go, Jack Riley. You want to copy Suzanne? That's hilarious. That's so funny. You guys are so funny. Look at you guys. Are we buddies? Are we twins? Here, give me your hand. You guys are so funny. What are you doing, Jack? Are we sitting? Yeah. Yeah. I think you are thirsty. Let's get you some water. So cute. You even brought the chair over and everything. That's funny. Come on, let's get some milk, Jack. Say, come on, Suzanne.
Close yourself.
Okay, let's go.
Kala.
Too much laughing and giggling in here. That's a good thing.
That is the A word, and we see this is a little boy who just turned 3. I can't help but compare that he is right at the age when my son started ABA. My son started ABA at 3 years and 2 weeks. And here's this little boy who has a 7-month jump on my son. Now, all kids are different, and we should not compare, right? All right, it's not good to go down that path. And yet we do, right? Don't you go to the park and you sit and you watch kids that are your child's age and compare and say, oh, my child's doing that, but oh, my child's not doing that? I I think it's part of this journey that we sit and compare, and I can't help but compare and think to myself how much easier our path would have been and how much shorter might our path had been had we gotten there early. I know, I tell you guys, it's not productive to go down that hallway. It really isn't, except to say that we all know how important it is for early intensive behavioral intervention, right? EIBI, it was our watchword, 2 weeks ago? EIBI, early intensive behavior intervention. That's what we know works with autism. But here's the thing that I want to remind all of you. What does early mean? Early is subjective, right? If a friend was going to come over to my house on Saturday morning and I said, what time? And she said early. I said, what does early mean to you? Are you coming at 5 a.m. or are you coming at 10:15? Because early means different things to different people, right? And she said early was at 10 o'clock. Well, we were going to be up at 6 o'clock, so that wasn't early to me. 10 o'clock was late to me. That's okay, right? But my point is when is early for you? How about now? Now is when early is. So if your child is 1.5, early is now. If your child is 3, early is now. If your child is 15, early is now. That's hard, right? Because you think to yourself, wait a second, you know, what would have happened if early had been, okay, I get it, I'm there with you. But we don't get to replay that. And early needs to be now. The truth of the matter is that ABA is effective for all of our kids because guess what? It's effective for all of us. It's effective for your kids who are not on the spectrum. It's so effective for your kids who are on the spectrum. And what I mean by effective is that you're going to be able to decrease behaviors you want to see less of, challenging behaviors like biting, kicking, tantrums, meltdowns, not going to bed when they're supposed to, not listening, not responding, right? All of that, those are behaviors you can decrease. And you can increase behaviors that you want to see more of, like responding to their name. How about eye contact? How about counting? How about the alphabet? How about reading? How about toileting? How about being able to look you in the eye and say, I love you, Mom? These are behaviors that we can increase if we make it reinforcing enough for them. This little boy, Jack Riley, is a wonderful, wonderful example, and we really have to thank the family for allowing us to come into their lives and see everything that's going on. We're not seeing everything that's going on, right? We get to see a little snippet here and there. But I can tell you, as somebody who has had this therapy in their home, it's a very realistic depiction of what it's like. We get to see a little bit of the parents and how this is hard. This is just hard. It's hard to allow people to come into your home, into your life, have an impact on your child, to take advice from them, to do things differently than the way you've always done them. Even though it works, it's still hard. It's emotional. It takes so much time. You don't have the freedom that other people down the street have. Boy, I remember, years ago when I got an opportunity to meet Bryce Myler for the first time. And if you don't know Bryce, put insurance in on one of our sites under the search and watch when Bryce has been on the show to talk about insurance. Bryce Myler is an incredible woman. She is heroic, let's say that. And Bryce works now at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. She's the head of the contract department. She is the bulldog that we let loose on insurance companies because guess what? She's a former autism mom. Her son, Brett, had a diagnosis of autism. We sometimes show the commercial when you for Recovered, and you see the mom who sits there and says, they told me that he was going to be put away in a home by the time he was 10. That's Bryce. And that's what she was told. She was told, don't get attached to this beautiful little boy, who, by the way, looks a lot like Jack Riley. And they said, just don't get attached, because by the time he's 10, he's going to be a big kid, and you're going to need to put him away. And you're going to need to walk away. And you know what? Thank goodness that she is who she is for all of our sake, because she went, I don't think so. And she kept asking questions until she found Dr. Doreen Grampuchet here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. And her son started ABA therapy more than a decade ago. In fact, I think it's been at least 15 years now. And he had his early intervention. Early was when she found out, right? And he is now in his 20s, in college, drives his truck, lost his diagnosis as a teenager because he no longer qualified for it. She's the mom, if I haven't told you the story before, she's the mom that here in California, we've had the regional centers before insurance reform, and that's who paid for ABA for the longest amount of time. And your person at the regional center will make a yearly visit, come out to the house, see what's happening, see how your child is progressing, and approve you getting more therapy, right? And one year she just called the regional center and she said to them, you know what, you've been so sweet, you've been so helpful, we really don't need you anymore. And they said, what do you mean? Once you're a client to the regional center, you're a client for life. Right? And she said, yeah, but we don't need you anymore. My son no longer qualifies for a diagnosis of autism. And the regional center said, we don't know what you're talking about. And she said, well, my son recovered. And the regional center said, we don't know what that term is. And she said, well, he doesn't qualify anymore. He doesn't meet the criteria anymore. It's time. You guys got to stop. There's no need for you to come to my house. I don't need the funding anymore. Enough, right? Imagine being in that circumstance, right? And she goes, we're done. He's okay. He's leading a totally normal life. We don't need this anymore. And the regional center said, oh, we think, maybe you might be a little delusional about this and you need to let the experts. And she said, okay, I'll make a deal with you. You come to my house on Saturday at this time, and I'm going to have a group of boys that my son plays with from the neighborhood at my house. And I'm going to welcome the expert in, and I'm not going to point out who my son is. He can watch this group of 8 or 10 boys play, and if he can pick out my son as being different than these totally typically developing children, then I'll continue to take your services. But if he can't, then you've got to admit that my child no longer qualifies, and we're going to, say, case closed on my son. Gotta love Bryce. So the expert came out to the house, prepared to take this challenge so that he could identify, totally confident that he was going to be able to pick out the child who had the diagnosis. And guess what? When the meeting was over, he said, okay, I know who your child is. And he said a child's name, and it wasn't her child. And Bryce said, yep, we're done here, and introduced him and said, this is my child. And he said, really? And that was it. And she was done. So I love, the idea that if we get this early enough, then we make a tremendous difference in our children's lives. All of the outcomes are not going to be Bryce's. We have to be honest about that, right? But a lot of the cases are going to be. Statistics show that around 47%, if they're given the right amount of ABA over the right amount of time, are going to have such significant progress that they aren't going to qualify by an objective expert, are not going to qualify for the diagnosis of autism anymore. That's kind of amazing. But, I was one of those moms. I said, that's great. 47%, that's better than anything that I've heard of. Fabulous. But what happens to the other 53? Well, by the way, my son is in one of the other groups, because there's basically 3 groups. The ones about 47% who no longer qualify for the diagnosis, a middle group that does really well, makes substantive progress, but they still qualify for a diagnosis, although some of those kids eventually get to the point where they no longer qualify, and they make tremendous progress, are often included in completely typical classes and excelling, but they might have 1 or 2 things that they're still working on that they still qualify for the diagnosis. And then there is a much smaller group of kids who still make substantive progress, but their progress is usually in the arena of adaptive skills and functional functional communication skills. I really don't think it's fair of anybody to poo-poo that, because if you have a child at home who's profoundly affected by autism and maybe sometimes has a dual diagnosis of autism and something else, being able to get toileting and adaptive skills like bathing themselves and to be able to functionally communicate is everything, isn't it? And that is the spectrum of what we see of kids who get the right amount of ABA over the right amount of time and early enough. When is early? Now. Now. And we see with Jack Riley that progress is possible. Go back. Watch the first episodes. See how different this child is in terms of how he interacts, in terms of what he finds pleasurable. His gaze alone is worth it all. And his speech has exploded. It's wonderful. And he's 3. Where are we going to get to by the time he's 4? I just met him recently, and he's now 3.5. He's pretty spectacular, I gotta tell you. So check out the A Word. They have their own YouTube channel, and give them a look, because it's really an amazing process that's being made. And we'll be back in just a little while with your question of the day and answers, so stick with us.
Here I stand, a man, someone who has overcome struggles, someone who has endured perceptions of what others thought of him, thinking he was stupid because he was autistic, or simply believing him to be nothing because he was different to them in their minds. But I stood my ground. I just wanted to say to the organization in general, alongside helping me to improve communicatively and socially, the other greatest gifts you gave me were the value of discipline and a good work ethic. To quote Anthony Kiedis, to celebrate you is greater now that I can. You helped me to realize that the harder you work, the likelier you are to achieve success. Having had to work very, very hard to recover from autism, this discipline has continued to serve me well. I also realized that you taught me a lot about and instilled within me a quality of having compassion and sympathy for other people. That you will be concerned more with the needs and wishes of others than with your own is something that I'm awe of and I constantly strive to be. And in closing, the only way I can sum up card all of you is love. Everything you do to help families in need, you do out of the sheer love of wanting to make a positive difference in people's lives. And as I stand here before you as a mature adult, I have to say that I'm extremely grateful for your unwavering loving commitments to helping others and me recover from potential life roadblocks and become active and contributing members of society. While I can't overcome obstacles without a will, I cannot have a will without the love of those supporting me. And without love, I am nothing. Thanks again so very much for your love, everything that you've done and continue to do. Please give my best wishes to your families, everybody else with cardio isn't here, and especially all of your clients and their kids. I'm confident that they too will be able to overcome, and I know that they'll be successful with what they do as long as they continue to put their minds, hearts, passions, and best efforts into it. Enough said.
Welcome back to Autism Live. It's that time of the day when we take on our question of the day and your answers. Our question today was, what is your family's favorite meal to eat during the summer? I know I said no judgments whatsoever, but you guys are frightening me. So we'll talk a little bit about some of the things, but no judgments, but I'm scared. That's all. No judgments, just fear. Okay, so one person who said if it doesn't say SpaghettiOs, he isn't eating it, but I love that she says I have to sneak stuff into it. That's a thinking mom right there. Because, you know, we've had many experts come in here and talk about food issues and about kids who will only eat one thing or 3 things, whatever it is, that very limited diet. And their big thing that they say really works, scientifically proven, that if you take a small amount of the food that you want them to eat and you mix it in with a large amount of the food that they love eating, and over time you very slowly, incrementally, very slowly change the ratio. So you've got a cup of SpaghettiOs and you want them to like cooked spinach or whatever the thing is that you like. You put, you know, just a little minuscule grain of cooked spinach into the SpaghettiOs, and then the next week you put 2 little grains of spinach into the SpaghettiOs. And over time, and I mean literally a lot of time, gradually there's more and more spinach in the SpaghettiOs until the balance is tipped and there is more spinach than SpaghettiOs. If you do it slow enough, the experts tell us that the children will eventually eat the spinach. Of course, we've heard that anytime we're introducing a new food, we have to introduce it at least 20 times statistically, at least 20 times before the child will eat it. I know it sounds exhaustive, but think about how many meals you prepare. And, you know, you can get to 20 meals in a week. We're not talking about mommy dearest of keep putting the steak on the plate, the same exact steak. But, you know, if you want the child to eat something different, maybe you've got the SpaghettiOs on the plate and you're putting a little bit of spinach into the SpaghettiOs, but you want them to eat hot dogs, or you want them to eat something else, or you want them to have a vegetable, so you have the SpaghettiOs there and you put the carrots next to it. And you don't say anything, like you're not getting down from the table until you eat the carrots. The carrots are there. The child eats them or they don't. You're not engaging in a battle, but you keep putting the carrots there. And they tell us that around the 20th time, the child will be in a place where they're willing to take at least a bite and try the food, if we haven't made it a battleground. I'm just saying. I am not a food issue expert, but that's what our experts tell us. Okay, another person who says if it's not Hot Pockets or hot dogs, my daughter won't eat it. Again, you know, pairing it with other things and representing it. You know, and there are healthier hot dogs. Maybe start with changing up the kind of hot dog and seeing if you have some flexibility there. You might not, but you might. French fries and hamburgers, the good old American standby, right? I love this one. Spinach wraps with veggies and dip. Hate cooking in the heat, LOL. Love that. That sounds fabulous. Spinach wraps with veggies and dip. Ooh. Another person who says, I will say French fries with nuggets and salads and ice creams. You know, and we got to be a little bit more lenient in the summertime. Another person who says mac and cheese. Again, slide some stuff into that mac and cheese very slowly. Chicken nuggets, onion rings, and cheesecake. There we go. Catfish with whole corn and green beans. Doesn't that sound yummy? Mashed potatoes and grape juice. That sounds pretty fabulous. Chili dogs and chips. There's a way of spicing up a hot dog. Put a little chili with it. You're getting some beans and some tomatoes in there. Can't be understated how great that can be when we add those other flavors in for our kids. But we don't want to make it a battleground, right? It's important that our kids are eating. Move slowly, very slowly, adding things into their diet. I think that is the absolute key. That's what our experts tell us. Really interested in what you guys eat in the summer. I don't see a single watermelon there. You guys are missing it. Watermelon is particularly good in the summer. All right, or melons or other kinds of fruit. If nothing else, introduce that in. If you know, eat all the things that you're eating, but introduce some really healthy fruit in. And then every once in a while, slide a vegetable under the fruit. You'd be amazed what can happen. All right, let's take a break, and when we come back, we will have our cognition tip of the week. And don't forget that Vince Redmond is going to be with us at the top of the hour. You won't want to miss that. Stick with us. Hi, welcome. I'm here with Sue Cho, and Sue, tell us what you do.
I'm a senior clinical supervisor, and so I provide supervision to children in some of our clinics, and I also am a trainer for CARD, and so I provide training for all the supervisors that are either learning to be a supervisor or current supervisors, and I also provide workshop services to children all over the U.S., Caribbean, Europe, South Africa, and Asia.
Very cool. And you're here today to talk with us about teaching prepositions.
Yes.
Help us to know how we can teach this.
Okay. So when you're teaching prepositions, there are a variety of ways that you can teach it. When you're teaching your first several targets, you want to make sure whatever you teach has a distinct front and a distinct back. Probably go with simpler and then more complex. when you're teaching your beginning targets. One way you can do it is always have the same item to use as your reference point. You can also do it where you're constantly changing your reference point. So maybe within a sitting I decide now I'm going to use a truck, or I'm going to use a box, or I'm going to use a chair. But that also depends on how flexible the child you're teaching is with learning with multiple items. This lesson is actually a little more on the abstract side. So if you find that your child's having difficulty with lessons maybe such as attributes, that you may want to start off where you use multiple objects as your reference point. So I use a helmet, I use a chair, I use a car, but I never turn the position of the item.
Right.
And so once they learn if the item is in the same position where the object goes, then you can start turning your item or putting the child in a different position in relationship to the item.
So you start with receptive, though, where you're asking them to do it. They're not having to say anything, they just have to demonstrate their knowledge of it. Then how do you teach the expressive? How and when?
So what we do is then we'd probably work on manding so that the child can request for the position. Let's say the child wants a particular color, but we're not working on colors. We're actually trying to work on prepositions. So I have a yellow block on the top. I have 2 white cars, but maybe there's a slight distinction, and they want the one that's in front of the helmet. So then they would have to say in front. So then they get the one that's in front.
Okay.
Okay.
Great.
Or when you're asking about tacting, at first I start off and I say, where is the block? And the child says, on top. I have some children that actually have a really hard time learning it receptively. I try to make them motivated to ask for a position then.
And how do you motivate them to ask for the position?
You want to put things there that you know that they like.
It seems like one of the keys to this is having really preferred items to do the exercises with.
Definitely, definitely. Because they're more likely to pay attention too then.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I want to remind you that at the top of the next hour, we're going to be joined by the fabulous Vince Redman. He has more than 20 years, I believe, of experience working in the field of autism and ABA with children, but he is also a marriage and family therapist, and he's going to be talking with us about how we talk to our kids about autism. When do we talk to them about it? How do we couch this? How do we talk to their friends, to their teachers? And when do we do that? How do we let our community know? Do we let our community know? And then we're also going to be talking with him about, he really is a wealth of knowledge about teenagers with autism, about how to deal with those teen years, young adulthood, how we help them to get employment and internships, what we can do as parents to set them up for success, what we can do as employers to set someone up for success if we're working with someone on the autism spectrum. You know, there's a new show that started last night, and I got to be honest, the pilot aired last night, and I made it through the first opener up to the first commercial, and it was too late for me. I'm recording it to watch the rest of it, but I thought it was really interesting that it is the guy who was the star of Will and Grace, who played Will. I can't think what his name is off the top of my head, and it's driving me crazy. It's Eric something. Frustrating. But in any case, he is the star of this new show called Perception, in which he plays an expert and that it does, I guess, some crime solving on perception. But it was very clear to me in the first 5 minutes of the show that he is somebody who has big sensory issues, is perhaps even on the spectrum. So I found it really, really interesting that our kids' issues have become such a topic of information for television and for films. They're not always getting it right, but it is very interesting to me that we're seeing more and more characters on television who deal with some of the things that our kids do. And I thought it was a really clever depiction. There's a moment when, you'd have to look at it and say, I'm seeing some spectrum things there. There's a moment where a student, he's He's a college professor, and a student asks him if he'd like to go for coffee, and he responds in a very not sophisticated social way that is a little on the embarrassing side. And then he goes to the police department to present. He interviews someone to see if they're telling the truth, and he comes out and says, no, in fact, they're not telling the truth, and here's how I know they're not telling the truth. And he's standing there having to wait to see what the police are going to do. But you see from his point of view, from his perspective, in fact, all the different noises that are happening around him, and it gets to the point where he's overwhelmed sensory-wise. But he, as an adult who is at the top of his game, has found a way to cope with that sensory input. He puts on some headphones and begins to listen to classical music, but as soon as he does that in the busy police office, he starts conducting because he gets so excited about it. And of course, everybody turns and looks at him and thinks that he is odd and peculiar. I can't wait to watch the rest of it. I'm terribly interested to see what happens as Eric McCormick. There it is. Takes me a while sometimes. But I can't wait to watch the rest of it to see how it all plays out. But just as something of interest to you, the show is Perception. And also want to remind you of some of the things that are coming up the rest of this week. Of course, tomorrow we have Vince Redmond at 11 o'clock today, talking about those topics we were just talking about. And tomorrow at 10 a.m., we have the fabulous Evelyn Gould, who's going to be with us, and she's going to be talking about all-important parent training. How we get the training that we need so that we can be on this team. This is a whole new set of things for us to learn, and there's some considerations of how stressful it is for us, not only that we're trying to figure out our child, but we have to figure out this whole new way of reacting and being with our child. It's stressful. And Evelyn's going to be talking about some suggestions of how we can surmount all that and really get in and dig in and be a part of the meat of what's happening. Because we know that for ABA to be effective, we have got to be valuable members of the team. If we're not upholding what's happening, then it's not going to stick, right? So really super important. And then at 11 o'clock tomorrow, we're going to be doing Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I will tell you now that unfortunately we're not going to be joined by Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson. Not actually in the studio. She's been called away on important family matters. Our thoughts and prayers are with her. But I'm going to be here for Let's Talk Autism with Shannon. And we have an interview that we were able to do with a wonderful autism mom, Vena Tiero, and she is a filmmaker who has made a really wonderful documentary called My Tiero Boys. And we were able to sit down with her, both Nancy and I, a little over a month ago. And so we're going to be able to show you that interview tomorrow. So you're still going to get your healthy dose of the wonderful Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson. And I know Nancy would ask me to remind you that ACT Today, Autism Care and Treatment Today, is in a grant phase right now. You can go to their site, www.act-today.org, and start filling out your paperwork and ask for a grant for the things that you need for your child. You know, there's a waiting list, and I know that not everybody is going to get a grant, but it won't hurt to ask. So I encourage you to ask for the thing that you need, whether it's help to make your insurance deductible, whether it's help, we just had the wonderful Captain Jean Saunders on yesterday, and if you want to get one of those bracelets and have this organization come to your community and you need some help with that, those are great things to apply for grants from ACT Today. You want an iPad for your child? Please apply for a grant. Who knows? You could be one of the lucky recipients and have that for your child. So also want to tell you that on Thursday, the author Richard Stripp is going to be with us. He has written, Mommy, I Wish I Could Tell You What They Did to Me at School Today. This is a really important book. I got to be honest with you. I'm reading it right now. It's a very important book where he takes individual cases that he is aware of, actual cases of children and things that have happened to them at school, and while most of the children that he's talking about are nonverbal, he writes very eloquently as if from their point of view, from their perspective about things that happened to them at school, if they were able to tell their parents. It's really a wonderfully written, very poignant book, and Richard is going to be with us in the studio on Thursday, and we're also going to have Angela Persicki on Thursday in talking about research. So big week. As I mentioned, we're not going to be here on Friday live, and we won't be here all next week, but this week is pretty great, if I do say so myself. In any case, it is time for the cognition tip of the week. This is the time of the week when we talk about those things that are a little bit harder to get your grip on, right? Things that a lot of people say you can't teach a child with autism about thinking and believing and false beliefs. But the truth of the matter is that the Center for Autism and Related Disorders has built a curriculum around these things and has researched it now for over 20 years and found it to be very effective in working with our kids on the spectrum. I saw my child working on these things, and we continue to work on them in skills, and I gotta tell you, it's great fun, exciting. It's the kind of thing that when my child was diagnosed, that I felt that grief, that little death about, okay, we're not going to have conversations about higher thoughts, you know, that higher thinking, executive thinking, when, you know, you're putting things together and talking about what you believe and what somebody else believes, and those wonderful arguments that I was planning on having at the dining room table, that guess what? I get to have now, because my son did brilliantly on these lessons, and they are brilliantly written. And of course, there's many different things that we talk about within the cognition curriculum. And today I wanted to talk about detecting sarcasm. You know, what's funny about it is that within the skills curriculum, there's always two sides to the lesson, right? There's, for lack of a better explanation, there's the exceptive and the expressive and the receptive side of it. That when we teach a child a word, we teach it to them expressively and receptively, right? The label for something. So they not only can hear it coming from somebody else, but they can say it in the direction of going towards someone else. And all of the other things, when we teach them desires, we teach them about their personal desires and about other people's desires. So there's always two sides to the lesson, from their perspective and from somebody else's perspective, right? So that they get that global understanding of it. Well, there's one exception, and it is in sarcasm. There are no lessons to teach a child to be sarcastic, because you don't need to be sarcastic to succeed in life. I know in my family, pretty much you do. But in most circumstances, you do not need to be sarcastic to succeed. It isn't a skill that's necessary. However, detecting sarcasm, that's an entirely different kettle of fish, right? You have to be able to detect sarcasm in order to glean actual meaning from what somebody is saying. So if I've done something and somebody says, oh, well, that was a good job, I might, if I don't know how to detect sarcasm, think that was a good job, and from now on do exactly that job. You can see how that could be really a really detrimental thing, right? So we need to teach children about sarcasm and give them opportunities to identify when someone is being sarcastic. And there are great lessons in skills, and I think they're actually very fun. And of course, in order for something to really stick, it's got to be reinforcing, right? So we were able to teach my son all these different circumstances of sarcasm, because sarcasm can come in a lot of different ways, right? Sometimes people give it away in the way that they say something, sometimes they don't, right? So to be able to detect when somebody says something and think, okay, do they mean what they're saying, or do they actually mean the complete opposite? I know sometimes in my life I have had somebody say something and I've thought, okay, I don't know if you're being sarcastic or not, and had to ask. So we're also teaching children, if they can't discern it, to be able to ask and say, are you being sarcastic? So that's one of the very early skills. Now, my son, when he started to learn this, had a really hard time saying sarcastic. In fact, he would say sartastic. So, and we were encouraged while he was working on that to be as sarcastic as possible. Not a problem for me. I'm very good at the sarcasm thing. My nephew says I am the queen of sarcasm. shocked by that high honor. But in any case, so it was like a whole summer of me walking around and saying things and my son saying, "Mom, that's sarcastic." And I would go, "Yes, you did it. You knew that that was sarcastic. How did you know that?" And then he would talk through, well, what gave it away was this, this, and this. And I would go, "Good job. That's knowing it's sarcastic," right? But I see him now. He has now generalized that. And so he is able to do that with his friends. That we had his birthday party not that long ago, his 9-year-old birthday party. And I don't remember what it was, that one of the boys just said something that was just not nice, you know, and they said it very sarcastically and said it to my son. And his response was, he said, "You know, there's no need to be sarcastic." And I just remember one of the other moms turned and was like, "Whoa, how about that?" You know, it really helps our children because it leaves them less prone to be taken advantage of. If they realize when somebody's being sarcastic, it will prevent them from behaving in a way that's going to cause further ridicule for them, right? But it also, I mean, you know, that's a pretty horrible thing to think of, although it's the truth. But it also helps them to be able to negotiate the world in a broader sense. And anything that does that, I'm a big fan of. So we want to teach our children to detect sarcasm. Yes, some of our kids pick up, even though we don't teach them lessons. My son is very sarcastic sometimes. He has generalized sarcasm, just like we did not ever teach him how to swear, and somehow he was exposed to it. I can't imagine by whom. And he has generalized, and so we have to talk to him from time to time about language, and we have a jar for quarters. Should anyone in the family use language that is inappropriate? I can't imagine me ever having to put a quarter in that. In any case, teaching sarcasm, a really, really important thing to do, detecting it anyway. We're going to take a break. We're going to come back with our myth of the day, and don't forget, at the top of the hour, it's Vince Redmond talking about how and when do we talk to our kids about autism, and how do we deal with internships and employment? How can we set our kids up for success? Stick with us.
Hi, we're here today with Cecilia Knight, who is the Director of Training for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. And today I'm thrilled to have her here because we're going to talk about manding. What is manding?
A request that you would make of another person.
Why is manding one of the first things that seems to come up in most programs?
Okay. Well, a baby requests for his mother's attention by crying or by reaching. And so it's one of the first ways that you let another person know what you need. And then that other person reinforces you by either picking you up or giving you something to drink or something to eat. And so many of our clients aren't really good at that once we start a program with them. And unfortunately, many of them engage in inappropriate manding. Screaming, kicking, biting. And so what we're trying to do early on is no longer reinforce the inappropriate ways of asking and rather reinforce the appropriate ways of asking. And as we teach them an appropriate way to ask for, Mom, play with me, can I have juice, or, you know, even more simply, help, then we see those inappropriate demands decreasing and the appropriate demands increasing, because the child's wants and their desires aren't really changing, but we're teaching them the right way to get their needs met.
So manding doesn't have to actually be spoken. It can be nonverbal as well.
And that's exactly right. They could exchange an icon. And if I bring you an icon with a cup on it and hand it to you, and you bring me a juice cup, then we've made an exchange. And so there is what Skinner would call verbal behavior. You have reinforced my request for a cup or for juice.
So when we say verbal behavior, we're not talking about vocal behavior necessarily.
That's right.
It's just that it's a conversation of some sort.
what is reinforcing to the child? The man is evoked by the child's desire or their need for something. So early on, we may arrange the situation where I know that they're interested in the juice and they're reaching for it. I may hold it back to just say juice or ja or whatever is appropriate for that child. And then as soon as they emit any sort of response, give a high level of praise and then immediately give them the juice. But what controls demand is that specific reinforcer. So of course, if the child asks for a juice cup and you bring something else, then they're not being reinforced with what they asked to have.
Okay.
What do you want?
Good
job.
You say wafer, please. Wafer, please. Good talking. Thank you, Dad. Thank you, Daddy.
Welcome back. It's time for the myth of the day, and today's myth is one that really hits me center chest. I had the opportunity to talk recently with a bunch of parents who have been on this journey for a long time, and something that someone said really touched me. A parent said, you know, some days it's really hard for me to convince myself that it wouldn't be easier just to move into acceptance and say there's nothing that I can do for this child. That there are days when it feels like that would be easier. And that the parent was also saying that that was something that they were hearing resoundingly from their friends and family and saying, you know, you should just accept it. It would just be easier on you if you accepted that there isn't progress available for your child. I want to, this is a big myth. It is not easier to give up in any way, shape, or form. In fact, that is a steaming pile of poo, that technical term that we have for things that just do not make sense. I will tell you, as somebody who has been through this, that it's difficult when you say, no, we're going to take this on as a family, as a community. We're going to take this on, and we invite people to come on board with us and be positive people on this journey with us. We're going to make a difference in this child's life that is going to last for all of our lives. We are going to not be in a position of acceptance that this is the full progress that is available for our child. We're in acceptance about the fact that the child is diagnosed with autism, right? We get that. But we're not going to accept that this moment in time, that's all the progress is available for this child, and that it's just too difficult. Steaming pile of poo, right? We are going to elevate ourselves and take people with us on this journey who are willing to show up for a child and make a difference. When we look at the A word and we see in 7 months what has happened for this child, Jack Riley, it is undeniable that there has been progress. We show you sometimes clips of Maddie, a very young little girl in the Midwest here in the United States, whose family said, no, sorry, there's not an ABA provider here, so we're going to do this on our own. We're going to take card eLearning. We're going to get volunteers from our church. We're going to use skills, and we're all going to make a difference in a child's life. We see families around the country who have said, no, we're not going to view this as the last bit of progress that there is. We'll do what we have to do, and we will gather the people we need to. We've seen that sororities in a college community have said, we're going to take on this child for the next 4 years, and we're going to be available to be volunteers. We're going to get trained in ABA techniques, and we're not going to charge the family. This is our community outreach. There are people who want to help you, and it is not easier to give up. When we think about my husband and I, when we think about the things that we needed to do and that we needed to sacrifice in order for our child to get this all-important help, and for us to, you know, man and woman up and say, all right, you know, we're not going on that vacation to Hawaii that our friends are going on, because we're going to be here and we're going to work on ABA. Well, let me just tell you, I'm never going to miss Hawaii. Hawaii is always going to be there, and someday maybe I'm going to go to Hawaii, but I get to sit across the table from my son every day and have a conversation with him. And my son can toilet himself and goes to school and has friends, and he's going to continue on with his life, and he's going to make a difference in this world. And I know I'm not the only parent who feels that that's infinitely more important than Hawaii. Love Hawaii. Nothing against Hawaii whatsoever. But you know, there are callings in this life and there are jobs in this life. And saying You know, the truth of the matter is that, you know, sometime down the road, I can go to Hawaii and I can take my child with me and we're going to have a great vacation. And I'm not going to be in the middle of the Hawaii vacation and getting a phone call from somebody saying, your child has tantrumed so badly that he hurt himself. And I'm not going to be at the hotel with my child and having to pick him up off the floor and drag him up to the hotel room because he's in the middle of a meltdown. I can take my son to Hawaii and go and sightsee with him and talk about how wonderful Hawaii is. How much more wonderful and exciting is that than saying, you know what, I just don't have any more to give. Every bit of energy that you put in right now, we've been talking all day about how now is the moment to start early intervention. I don't care how old your child is now. Let's remember that ABA is effective for all of us and for all of our children. There is more progress. I'm telling you, there is more progress, and it's worth going after no matter how hard it is. In this moment in time, I guarantee you it's going to be so worth it down the road. Do not give up. And if there are people in your life who are telling you you should just accept this and give up, the one action that I want you to take is to eliminate that person from your Rolodex on your phone. No more conversations with them, because that's not helpful to you. It's not useful to your child. They don't understand. They don't get it. Don't call them for a while. You can always call them in a couple of years when your child is doing better and say, hey, I'm in a better place now. Why don't you come and see where my child is now? But don't spend time with people who tell you that seeking progress for your child isn't worth it. They don't know what they're talking about. Talk to some of us who've been there and done that. We'll tell you your kid is worth it. You're worth it. Your family's worth it. Don't you give up. You stay here with us. There are solutions. There is progress at hand for all of our kids wherever they are on the spectrum. There is no giving up on anybody. We're not giving up on you. Don't you give up on yourself, and don't you dare give up on your child. Your child's worth it. Okay. That's my myth of the day. I'm done. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to bring Vince Redmond into the studio. You're going to love him. Now is a great time if you have a question. Let me remind you, if you're watching us on autism-live.com, all you have to do is go to that question box. You can type in your questions, hit enter. You don't have to log in. You don't have to register. There's no cost. Ask questions right now. We're going to be talking about how you talk to your child about autism, when you talk to your child about autism, and then a little bit later we're going to be talking with Vince about kids' employment and internships and how we set our kids up for success and how we might find ourselves in a position where we could hire somebody on the spectrum, and how we can, as an employer, set ourselves up for success having somebody on the spectrum as one of our employees. If you're not watching us on Autism-Live, or if we're not live at the moment that you're watching, still lots of ways that you can be writing into us. I'm going to ask Matt to scroll through some of those different ways on the screen. There is the email address that you can be emailing us. You can also phone into the show if you want to ask Vince a question and you're watching us live. We can patch you directly into the studio so that you can be talking to Vince. You could even Skype in with us. You can also be talking to us on Facebook, and we welcome your tweets. We'll try to monitor all of those during the next few segments. So come on down and ask your questions. Stick with us. We'll be back with Vince Redmond in just a couple of minutes.
When Maddie was diagnosed, I'll be honest, I was very ignorant on what autism was. I knew that autism was basically something that hit boys at the age of 2 to 3. They shut down, and sometimes you think of the typical Rain Man movie. And with Maddie, she was doing all the same signs and symptoms of a typical child with autism spectrum disorder.
Stand up.
She didn't even acknowledge us coming into the room. She had barely any eye contact. She didn't interact with her sisters. She didn't really do anything. She just basically lined up her toys, and that was about it. We have a team of 7 volunteers, or 8 now. We have 8 volunteers, including my husband and I. And I'm the team leader, and so I do all the curriculum and get everything ready each week.
Jana was downstairs until 11 o'clock at night working on curriculum, going through 2 different textbooks. And then we, as a group, meet on Monday nights, and we would go through what the curriculum was from Jana. And a lot of times we would go, well, how exactly do you do that? How do you sit her at the table and do this trial base? What skills has done for us, it's taken that away from Jana trying to figure out the curriculum for one. She can go down, or even our laptop, and she can sit down and through all these questions, it comes up with the different programs.
At least for me, it was a relief off my shoulders. I was worried that I might be missing something, missing a curriculum that maybe she needs to know, where skills, they have every possible thing your child needs to know from 0 to 7. They have a program for that.
What noise is this?
Good job!
Every program that we did with her, I knew it was specific for what she needed to learn. Because before skills, it was a lot of, okay, well, is that really age appropriate for a 2-year-old? You know, because it's not generalized. It's anywhere from 0 to 7. This is what your child needs to know, and in most manuals you'll find. But for this, okay, yep, she should be learning this. And no, she's not 4 yet. She doesn't need to know that yet.
We are so fortunate that Jana was able to attend a conference put on by CARD that opened the door for skills, and that there's no looking back for us.
We started using the program in November. It seemed like by January something just clicked, and she has completely kind of came out of her fog that she was in for quite a while.
I have never read a documented case on any child that has not benefited anything from applied behavior analysis, and now with this new skills and being, you know, like the E version of ABA, I can't imagine it doing anything harmful to their child. It's nothing but exponential growth for us.
To see her now, it just blows us away. I mean, we call her our little miracle child because in 7 months' time, she's just blossomed into this normal, functioning child, and suddenly, we joke about it all the time, like suddenly we have twins.
If you're even thinking about doing it, do it. Because the absolute worst thing you can do is do nothing at all. And even if you use this program and it's just a single mom or a single dad working in the evenings with their child, this program is going to benefit them. It's going to show you where they are, it's going to show you where they need to go, and it's going to show you what skills and how to get there. It is an online book on how to help recover your child.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We are webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. And our wonderful guest right now is the fabulous Vince Redmond. Vince, tell them what your official job is here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. I know it's changed.
There's an official job?
I know it changes from time to time.
A little bit of everything?
You do a little bit of everything, truly.
Right now, I am the Regional Director and Director of Family Services for CARD.
Okay, wonderful. So the Director of Family Services for CARD, that seems like a pretty broad thing, but you carry some different titles.
Right.
And you have over the years. You started here as a therapist, is that correct?
Yeah.
And
almost
you are,
20 years ago.
Wow. And you are featured in the film Recovered, which is about 4 kids who ultimately recovered.
I was really young then.
Yes, you were very young.
I was very young in that picture, in that film.
But made quite a difference in some lives as a young man. And you've continued to work in the field of autism, and you are also a marriage and family therapist.
Correct.
A lot of things going on there that are of use to us.
Yes. My head is always running. Never stops moving.
Well, we love that because, you know, as a parent on this journey, I have always said, you know, there's the child's journey, which, you know, cannot be denied and is huge, but the whole family has to go on the journey. And the extended family and the support system, everybody has to go on this journey, and it's a stressful one for everyone. In fact, our entire topic this week is managing stress. And you're able to to look at it from both sides and really see the whole full picture.
Right, right. And that's the thing. And we've always said, you know, one of the things I've always said is autism is a family disorder. It's not an individual disorder, because the family has to change as well. There's a lot of growing, there's a lot of bereaving, there's a lot of, you know, grief, there's a lot of, you know, tragedy, there's a lot of work to be done. And any time there's work to be done, there's stress and there's anxiety. And all our services, you know, for the, you know, for better or for worse, have been for the kids.
Yeah.
And it's been fantastic, you know, world renowned for our ABA services, but we need to continue to support the families as well. We need to, you know, support moms and dads and the siblings and grandmas, grandpas, nannies, everyone that's involved in the family, because it's the family unit that has to be able to support, to nurture, and to be able to grow the child with autism.
Absolutely. And we should say too, because a lot of our families, I know they would say, well, we all understand that there's the stress and there's the grief, that there is room for and is often a great deal of joy. And especially when we make room for it, there's room for more joy too. And I think that's what we'd all like to get to as much as possible. I've asked you to come today to talk about a couple of subjects that are really difficult to talk about, right? When and
You usually
how.
pull me in for those topics.
Yes, I know that you're the guy. We're going to talk about something that's difficult to get a handle on. Let's bring Vincent. So want to talk a little bit about how and when we talk to our kids about autism. And I know it's a broad subject, but you've seen a lot of things over the years. And then I want to talk about, you know, how do we tell other people and when do we tell other people? Is there any rule of thumb for a parent to follow for if they should tell their child you have a diagnosis with autism?
I think the only rule of thumb that I can think of, and there's really nothing written, is just, is it going to benefit the child?
Okay.
I think a lot of decisions have been made by families and school district professionals and so forth, is what is going to be best for them.
Yeah.
Maybe it's going to ease the family's anxiety or the parents' anxiety, but it might not necessarily be the best for the child, because maybe they don't want people to know, or maybe they're not ready for it, or maybe they don't understand it, or what have you. So I think the rule of thumb that I would tell parents is that if it's going to benefit the child, then I would say it would probably be okay.
Yeah.
But if it's to benefit somebody else, then maybe it's not a good idea to disclose.
Okay, so looking at your intention in disclosing it. And we talked about this a little before in the break about how different things for different families and different kids too. Our kids are all different.
Right, in different levels. I mean, some kids, you don't need to talk to them about it, because they won't understand. They won't understand they're different. They don't see that they're different, and that's fine. That's great. Let it be. But as kids get older and kids get more competent, they at times can tell that something's different.
Right.
And that's where we have to start then talking as going back to family, as a family unit, you know, what are we going to do? When are we going to say it, and what are we going to say? Because as they start to feel different, they need an explanation on why. They can't just feel different and everybody pretend that everything's okay.
Yeah.
So if they're aware of it, that's a good sign that it's going to be time to start talking about it.
Okay. So really important when they start to notice those differences, that's a really good time. I know for us as a family, you know, one of the things that really cheesed me off big time in the beginning was that I felt like something was going on with my child, and I couldn't put my finger on it, but of course autism was something that had come up in my mind. And I remember early on saying to somebody, do you think, you know, he might have autism? And I didn't ask the right person, of course, but I asked, you know, friends and family. They would, no, you're completely overreacting, no, no, no. And what I found out eventually, when I finally came out of denial and said, you know, I think we have something going on with our child, and we got him tested, and then we told some of those people, and they're like, oh, well, we didn't want to say anything to you, but we were talking amongst ourselves, and we really felt 6 months ago. And I was so mad for a while that people were talking about my child and about the fact that I was in denial and weren't sharing it with me, those were the people I didn't talk to for a while. I've since gotten over it a little. But I was mad. I was mad, and I kind of had a knee-jerk reaction that I didn't want anybody else to be talking about what was happening with him behind his back without him knowing it. It just affronted me. So we made this knee-jerk reaction that we were going to talk to him about it from day one, and it was just always a part of the conversation. There have been some times when I have been glad of that, and of course other times when I have had misgivings about that.
Right.
I'm glad that he knows and he talks about it on a regular basis. Because he's had it from minute
he can
one.
handle it.
Even when he
Yeah.
couldn't understand it, it was just words that we used.
Right.
We never, you know, I can remember going into doctor's office and they were used euphemisms and things and said, well, I said, you call it what it is.
Right.
You're not going to talk about it when you leave the room about him. You say it in front of him. But it was an emotional reaction. I don't think I was stopping to, in that moment.
In that time.
I didn't go through your litmus test of saying, wait a minute, who is this for? I think it was more for me and my personal outrage. But, you know, for families, they have to weigh that the decision that they make, you can't go back once you've told them.
Right, right. That's true. I mean, it's out there. I mean, my first reaction, just real quick, based on what happened to you, is that you should be angry.
Yeah.
I mean, because the people you love, the people you trust, should be the ones that can sit down with you and say, we're concerned, why don't you look it up? Maybe they're not professionals, they don't know, but they can say, hey, we got some concerns. And I think I would be angry too if the people I trust the most were talking about me and my family, but not bringing it forward to me. So, I mean, first off, I'll justify your anger. So there you go.
I appreciate it.
I think it was
Did you hear that? Those of you who know who you are.
It was okay. But again, I think, you know, when to talk about it and when not to talk about it is a very personal, as you said. It's a very personal and it's a very, you know, it's a very individual decision. The key to it is making it together, making it with your husband, making it with the other family members, siblings, and so forth, because they too have to live their lives with it. The siblings that go to school, kids ask questions. Why is your brother like that? Why is your sister like that? They need to have an answer. They need to have some type of retort to be able to say, oh, he's autistic, or he's special needs, or whatever we want to call it.
Right.
You know. He has a learning disability or he has a speech disability. It doesn't matter what the label is. It's just so that other kids understand that he has different needs than they do and they can act appropriately. And I think that's something we often forget. We often forget about everybody else's reaction in the family to what, you know, what our child has or doesn't have or whatever the diagnosis is. So when he has, you know, we're focused on when to tell him. It's also important to make sure that the family knows what to say when other people ask. So if you get asked, you know, like you said, you're up front, it's like, he's autistic, no problem, this is the way it is, and you've accepted that, which I think is fantastic. Other families, they don't like the word. The word scares them, or the word, it just strikes too much fear in their heart. So he's special needs. That's fine.
And I think it's important what you're saying is find the language for your family, because we don't say autistic. My son, if you say autistic, he says, I am not autistic. I have autism. You know, and he's very adamant about that. And I think you got to find, and I know other friends that say, I don't want you to say I have autism, say I am autistic. That's so everybody has their words, but find your words.
Right. Find your comfort zone and use the words, just don't deny it.
Right.
Just don't hide it, meanings that everything's okay.
Right.
Everybody sees it's not. I mean, and I think that's the denial stage. That's the early stages of grieving. And as you know, and all of the families know, you go through a grieving process. The minute it's diagnosed, the minute you see that something's wrong with your baby, your precious, your gem, we know at that point grieving is going to start.
Yeah.
And what's the one, you know, the one of the phases of grieving is denial. And that's where we go and we try to pretend that everything's okay or that it's going to get better, or it's going to get over, and this isn't going to be the journey that is as it is. And very natural, very understanding. But at that point, we need to. That's when the discussion needs to be: well, how are we going to classify this? What is the definition? What are we going to do as a family to be able to proceed forward? Is it autism? Is it special needs? Is it speech delayed? You know,
differently abled. Some people just say differently abled. He's differently abled. You know, it's whatever. However, I think that words have huge power.
Oh yeah.
And how you choose to label things says a lot about how you're going to feel about it later on.
What is a new one? Ability challenged or something like that,
I think differently abled.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole bunch of new ones come down that, like you said, they're very affirming, very powerful, very, very optimistic. You know, so that the person who hears that, they feel optimistic, and the person who is it also feels optimistic.
We started after, because we said has autism, and then we started saying is actively recovering from autism.
That's good.
On a daily basis he's doing that, and boy, we cause a stir. You'll say that to somebody, they go, what does that mean? Is there such a thing as recovery from autism? And I say, you betcha there is.
Recovering alcoholics, recovering drug addicts, recovering from depression. Why not?
And I always say, what else would you call it when they have have a diagnosis and they progress to the point where they no longer have it, what else?
Right.
You got another word?
Right,
Tell me.
right. If you got a better phrase, just go for it.
He is working towards recovery.
Yeah,
and continues to. So, you know, and that made me happy inside. I liked that term. And my husband and I both said, okay, this is what works for us. But I think everybody has their own choices, just like everybody has their own choice whether to disclose to other people that their child has autism. And this is a really personal decision.
Sure, and I think that's where a lot of the social, you know, nuances come in social, you know, social rules. Is like, who do I tell, who don't I tell? Obviously, we have our nuclear family that we were talking about, or our extended family. But when is it okay to go outside of that? Obviously, school and Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts and soccer and baseball and softball and all those kind of things. What do we tell them? What we don't? Again, I think by the rule of thumb is what is going to be in the benefit of the child? Does the soccer coach need to know that he's autistic so that he can appropriately make sure he blends into the team? Possibly. Yeah. I mean, I know I've coached, you know, a child that had autism. It was on the spectrum on my soccer team with typically developing kids, and it was good that I knew. Yeah. Because I was able to be a little bit more patient, be a little bit more understanding, be a little bit more. You know, adapt things a little bit better so that he'd be able to be successful, feel confident, feel blended in, feel like he's having a good job or he's doing a good time. But sometimes some kids, they're very aware of it and they don't want anybody to know because they don't want to stand out. They don't want to be different.
Or be treated differently.
Which is a great sign. Let me point that out. That's fantastic because that's the stage of development. You want them to be. You don't want them to feel different. They want to blend. The fact that they're understanding other people's perspectives and they're understanding how other people are looking at them,
that's progress,
is huge, and that's what we want. I had a boy who was in his early teens, and you know, he was asked to do a TV interview, and it was a whole spot on autism, and I was up there, and Mom did her thing, and they asked, you know, do you want to be on TV? And he's all, no. And we thought it was just emotions and just shy. And he goes, I don't want anybody to know. Right. And I thought that was fantastic. Yes. That was great because
it's a real healthy
it was
sign.
A huge sign that he was aware that he was different, but he didn't want to be different, and he was going to do everything he could to blend in. And he was aware that what people could or might think when the word autism comes up. So again, that's a different situation where it might be best to not say anything. Let him blend in. Maybe use, oh well, he's trying the best that he can, or he's going to give it his best effort. Sometimes he lacks in this, or however we want to frame it. But that might be a situation where it's best not to say anything because they're more aware of it. I think again, like we said, it's very individualized based on the situations. But again, what's going to be in the child's best interest? What's going to be in the best interest at that time? Because that can change 5 minutes later.
And you don't get to take it back. I mean, that's really, you know, a lot of times I'll talk to parents and they'll sheepishly say to me, you know, we don't let people know. And they think that I'm going to judge them because we've been very open and out there from day one, partially because of what I said. And that once you've opened it up, it's like there's no putting it back in the closet. It's out there, right? And I saw very early on that there was a certain amount. My son loves attention, absolutely loves attention. Anytime there's a camera and they want to interview him, he is thrilled. He said to me once on a Saturday morning, I said, what do you want to do today? We didn't have therapy. This was a good 3 years ago when he was still in pretty much intensive therapy. But we didn't have therapy on a Saturday. I said, what would you like to do today? And he goes, well, I'd like to set up a table somewhere and sign autographs. That's my kid, right? Nice. Loves to be in the public spotlight, absolutely loves that. So I didn't have any qualms about that. It's changing now that he's getting a little bit older, and I'm like, oh, okay.
Becoming a little more aware.
But I never judge when parents make the decision and say, we're not going to disclose, because there have been a couple of times that I have disclosed and it has bitten my child on the rear end. Right. And that I've said, you know, and I kind of pick and choose now. Like, he's at camp right now today, and we have not disclosed to the camp because I did not see the need to.
Right. There's no need.
And, you know, I mean, I guess they could go online and look him up and see it, you know, so I don't know what big secret I think I'm keeping, but chances are they're not gonna. And that they're not gonna realize that there's something different. And so more and more, it's not our conversation opener anymore.
Right.
It was for a lot of years.
But I think that's a good point. It evolves. When to bring it up evolves. I mean, some, you know, where it might be different when they're 4, 5, 6 years old versus when they're 14, 15, 16. 16.
Yeah.
Completely different situations, different stages of development, and different social opportunities and activities that they're going to be involved in. So I think, again, when to bring it up and when not, again, it's as variable as possible, but I think it changes as developmental stages go along as well.
I think that's an important thing for me to remember, because we haven't gotten to the teen years, and I can only imagine. We had Nick Yates in the other day talking, and you know, when Nick was a teenager, he said, I do not want to be known as Nick who used to have autism anymore. I'm done with that.
He just wants to be Nick.
I just want to be Nick. I just want to be Nick. Now, in his early 20s, he's
come around.
He's coming around to this idea that he says, I feel like I want to help out.
Right.
And as somebody who was in this position and is in the position that I am now, if there's something that I can do to help, then I'm going to, which I just admire greatly. Because I see that it is at a cost to him to disclose, and that he doesn't always disclose, but that occasionally he will step in front of our cameras and say, yep, one time I had autism, but that's a footnote in my life at this point.
And again, that's a perfect example of, again, phase of life's going through development. First, it was a badge of embarrassment because I don't want to be that. I want to be my own person. I don't want to be labeled by that. But as he's getting older, he's now seeing it as a badge of honor.
Yeah.
It's like, I overcame this.
Yeah.
You know, I want people to know this because it can give hope and inspiration to other people. Similar as you would be with anybody overcoming something, either it be an illness or a disability or a disorder. If they've overcome it, yes, you're going to go through a period where you just want to disassociate. You don't want to be known as the person with, that overcame depression or overcame autism or overcame alcoholism. You don't want that connection. But as time goes by and you see how you can be an inspiration or you see how you can help other people, oftentimes then they'll wear it with the badge of honor. Like, I overcame this, you can too.
Yeah.
Let's do this. And I think Nick's a prime example of that, where he reaches out to try to help now. I mean, he's called me several times, like, what offices can I come and talk to the families about?
Great.
And it's no longer Nick who had autism. It's just this young adult who wants to speak to other young adults to be able to help them out.
Right.
Who just happened to overcome it. It's kind of a side note.
Right, it is.
They're just more excited that he's there to do it and reaching out and giving this opportunity to their families.
Yeah.
And I think that's fantastic.
He's amazing.
And again, there's Jana and a lot of the other kids out there are doing the same thing.
Yeah.
They disassociate at times because they want to be their own people, but yet they're also reaching out to know that if they could do it, everybody, many other kids can too.
Yes, absolutely. Well, a wonderful thing. So when we're deciding about when to disclose and when not to, we're thinking about what is in the child's best interest. How much of it is what is in the best interest for the parent? Is that any part of it?
I mean, again, I couldn't, I'm not into absolute, so it'd be hard to say that it's never appropriate or it's always appropriate. But I think, again, if we're talking rules of thumb, sure, there's times where it might not be appropriate to for the parents to mention it at the time based on, again, is it going to create more of an uproar? Is it going to create gossip? Is it going to create some type of negative experience for the parents? Okay, understood that selfish reason is appropriate and is very worthy.
Yeah.
But I think those situations, are far less than the opportunities that come up that benefit the child.
Yeah. I just am thinking in terms of there have been a couple of instances where there have been very high-profile people who decided not to disclose, and there were people in our community who judged. And I would ask everybody to remember that, there's a child at stake too, and that in some instances there have been parents who've come forward, high-profile people, and been in support groups and shared. And I think for the most part, everybody understands it's a little bit like a 12-step meeting that you don't disclose.
This isn't something,
This isn't something to be shared with other people because it's the individual right of a parent.
Sure.
And that they should be the ones to get to decide whether they disclose what their child's status is. I was thinking about a friend of mine that not celebrity status, but she had a plan about when she was going to disclose to her son. She didn't feel that he he was ready yet.
Right.
But for her individual, she had a group, a community in which she had clearly disclosed herself as a parent of a child on the autism spectrum.
Right.
There was another parent, also a parent of a child on the autism spectrum, who was very open with her child and disclosed to that child and her neurotypical child that this other woman's child had autism.
Right.
And of course, you know, the first parent was horrified and thought, but your neurotypical child is going to say something to my child, and the one thing I don't want is for this information to come from one of his peers.
Right.
And so she kind of felt like her hand was forced and that she had to have the talk before. I don't know what, and I'd be interested in your opinion about parents sharing other children's status with their children, and to be careful and considered about that.
Well, I think that's a good discussion to have with them. You know, is this something we're going, you know, going back to how we're going to phrase it, you know, what are we going to say, what are we going to do? It's doing it as a family, not just mom doing it and then hoping that the other kids don't say anything, or mom saying things and then hoping everybody else's kids don't say anything. I mean, if it's out there, like you said, it's out there.
Yeah.
Going back to, you know, some of the high-profile, you know, families that have, you know, kids with autism, again, one of the things we touched on earlier is what circles, how far do we let that out?
Yeah.
Obviously, the nuclear family, the extended family, they know, and maybe they just keep it there. They're able to maintain it. They're able to manage it within that framework. And there's no need for the public or, you know, to know. They don't need to know. It's none of their business, A. But B, it's not going to benefit the child or the family in any way. The people who care for the child, the people who give services to the child, the people who are going to help the child, you know, move forward, they know.
Yeah.
And those are the ones that need to know. And again, just trying to keep it within those frameworks is best for the whole family because of their high-profile status that you and I don't have to deal with. So you know, looking at how many outer circles do we go to is all, you know, dependent on, you know, the family and what they want to do. And again, how many groups are they in? Some families, we don't know them from TED, and they just have their extended family, and that's as far as they go out. No, but they're not very social. They're not out and about. They're not, you know, in the public spotlight. So we wouldn't know them any different than if we saw them at the grocery store, we saw them at line at Disneyland. We don't know. And that's you know, and that's okay too. But then there's families who will step on a soapbox and say, hey, this is where I am. I'm going to help everybody that I can, and if you guys help me, I'll help you. And that's okay too.
You know what I'm really struck by is that as I'm thinking about all the reasons not to disclose publicly, they're all tied to that your child has the potential to be discriminated against, that people who aren't aware will say or do things that are inappropriate, and that kind of ticks me off.
As we know, it's been in the news lately of ignorance and saying things that aren't appropriate. And again, I don't think the intent is to, at least recently, is to discriminate as much as it's what's the word?
Wildly inconsiderate,
naive
and ignorant.
Ignorant. Right, not knowing that this is going to affect the child in many other families, you know, throughout the world. And I think that's something that's been very difficult when the child is aware of it. To hear these types of things or to see these types of things can be very damaging to the family and to the child. So we have to be not only careful of what's being said, but again, I think sensitivity goes across all, you know, all colors and all religions. It's being sensitive to everybody that we're talking to, and they're no different. And you're right. I mean, there's the opportunity for discrimination that's out there, as it is with all of us, and we have to protect that as much as we can. Going back to what's in the best interest of the child.
Yeah, but there is a part of me that, you know, would like for everybody to grab a big whoopee and get educated. I mean, how long has autism been here? And we're at 1 in 54 boys. Buy a vowel, figure it out, and stop saying stuff that is hurtful and harmful. We have a huge anti-bullying campaign about all kids. When are people going to get it? It just ticks me off.
And I actually am happy that it's out. I mean, it's kind of sad to say this, but I'm happy it's in the news. I'm happy it's in the media, because that conversation continues. It needs to get the media attention. The bullying. I mean, let's just stick with bullying, because that's the only way it's going to get resolved. Because everybody sees it. It raises everybody's awareness. Everyone's now more dialed into it. Everyone, you know, more people are protected. More kids are protected. More adults are protected, as you saw by that one crazy one that the bus attendant was getting abused.
Absolutely, but it's, you know, and you see things like that and you think, but it's still happening. It's shocking to all of us, and on the one hand, but we see that it's still happening. And I think that's the frightening thing. And, you know, I think back to very early on when my son was diagnosed with autism, we disclosed at our gym, because we had just joined the gym 2 weeks before he was diagnosed. He was diagnosed the day after we came in because I was leaving him in the daycare, and we disclosed, and I said, is this going to be a problem? No problem. And then, you know, he'd been there for 2 weeks, was the exact same child he'd been there for 2 weeks, right? And I'd never been called off the floor to deal with any problem whatsoever. And then I was being called every 5 minutes in, well, he did this, or he said that, we don't know what to do. I said, okay, I'll bring in a therapist to help train you people and to bring you up to speed. Well, you can't leave him during this time because we have a college student who doesn't want to, she's frightened by him. He was 2.5, and she was frightened by him. And I said, let me work with this young woman. No, she doesn't even want to talk to you.
Wow.
And then the next month we were kicked out. We were told that our child was no longer welcome there anymore.
Wow.
Yes. And
well, fortunately, that's even changed because there was just a recent incident in Huntington Beach, California, that was the same thing.
Really?
Almost identical. That
really?
They was there, and then he was diagnosed, and after the diagnosis, everyone went hands off, and they suggested that they go to a different gym, and they suggested they look and talk to their lawyers, and of course they backed off.
Well,
and so they're still there.
And you know, I couldn't go anymore. I you know, but. And afterwards,
that's terrible.
And
that
you know
they would
what
do
was
that to
really
you
terrible is that I knew that there were 3 other families that had kids there, and they had said you should never have disclosed. We wish you had asked us. We don't disclose. They don't know. We don't tell them, and our child does fine, and there's no big deal. And that was the first time that I went, well, I learned a lesson here.
Well, I mean, to some extent, we bank on compassion. We bank on people being understanding and stepping up and being the better person. The unfortunate thing is there's people out there that aren't.
Yeah.
They're not better people, and they won't step up. But again, we live and we learn and we move on. I mean, because there's situations you could probably go to 4 other gyms and everything would be fine.
Yes.
You know, it just happened to be that time there was one person that just wasn't ready for it, and you know, wasn't ready to step up to the challenge, and unfortunately that negatively affected.
And I understand that they have changed, that their policy has changed, and I talked to a parent whose child, you know, did so wonderfully at that same gym. So I understand that their policy has changed, although they haven't invited us back. What can I say? What can I say? We should take a break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about teenagers and employment and internships and all of those
jobs.
It's all you hear on the news, right? Jobs down, jobs up, jobs, voting, jobs, right? So we're going to talk about it here with our kids. Stick with us. More with Vince Redmond when we come back.
Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod, and this is my son, Jem. We're here today at the Home Depot. You might know that Home Depot is famous for giving free classes to adults on lots of things like tiling and other home crafts. Well, they also have free classes for kids as well. It's called the Kids Workshop. We love doing that, don't we, Jem?
Yeah.
It's cool. So come on inside with us and let's do a craft.
Yay.
The Kids Workshop is a program that's been around with Home Depot almost since we've been a company, and it's been developed to allow kids in the community to come in and give them an opportunity to build something, to be able to create something and be able to take just simple wood pieces and put them together with nails and hammers and screwdrivers and then paint them.
So you do this every first Saturday of the month.
Any Home Depot that you go to on the first Saturday of every month between 9 and 12, you can join different associates throughout different stores and build these projects with these kids.
And do they have to do anything beforehand, or can they just show up on that Saturday?
All they need to do is show up. We have all the tools, all the materials that the kids will need. We have aprons that we give to the kids that they can take home and maintain their pins. They get pins on a regular basis for completing projects. With that, they can keep track of how many projects they've done. And
it's all free.
It's all absolutely free, all provided.
Which is wonderful. And Wilson, I have to say, you know, you guys devised this for all kids to be able to do this.
Correct.
What I particularly love about it as an autism mom, it gives my child a place to come and learn a new skill, to socialize with kids of all kinds.
Absolutely. And that's what we're here for. Home Depot is definitely loves to be involved with the community and bring the community in to work with us. That's what we love to do.
welcome back to Autism Live. We were just watching that spot about Home Depot, and I was just telling Vince about it. It is a wonderful, wonderful thing that they do on the first Saturday of each month at Home Depot. It's totally free. The kids get to come. They get a kit every month. It's something different, kind of timely. They just did one. There was a moving truck for the month of July.
That's cool.
I don't know what the craft is for August. And the kids get to be there with a parent and work on the craft that's free. They get to socialize with the other kids. Sometimes, like on that one, when we took my son, they were building race cars, and they had the track for the kids to race the cars down.
Those are awesome. Those are fun. That's so fun for them.
Free, and they get to work on social skills, and they get to work on fine motor.
And you can adapt it to what they can do.
Absolutely.
That's great.
Because you can, you know, if you need to hammer the nails. When we took Jem for the first time, he was 3, and he couldn't hammer a nail, and the holes are pre-drilled so that they make it a little bit. Still, he couldn't do it. But now, you know, he's 9, and he's like, "Mom, step back! I'm hammering. I'm doing it myself. I've got the screwdriver. Where's the paint? I'm, you know, reading the directions. You know,
that's fantastic.
Yeah,
it's so much fun. And again, we can adapt it to what the child's need is. We can adapt it to what their experience and what their enjoyment level is, and let them have a good time.
Absolutely. And for all those parents out there who say, "Oh, my child doesn't have any friends. We don't get a chance to socialize, and you don't have the money to do a social skills group." First Saturday every month, you got an automatic social skills group.
Every Home Depot, or is
every Home Depot?
Wow, okay,
every Home Depot. And then not only that, it's really very clever. They get a free apron that they get to write their name on, so that's very reinforcing. And they get to borrow the hammer, the little hammer. They make their little craft, and you can take it home if it's too much sensory for the kids. There were some Saturdays that we just had to go home because it was too much. But if they stay there and do the craft and finish it, they get a certificate with their name on it, and they get a pin to put on their apron that has a little picture of the craft that they did. So eventually they have an apron covered with pins, and they collect the pins. I wouldn't do that with the really little ones because they're, you know, pins.
They're pins.
But you can save them for when they're a little bit older. Jem now proudly wears the apron with his pins and is totally thrilled, and it's free.
Yeah,
free,
that's great. That's great. That's good. I'm glad we're advertising that because that's fantastic.
Yes, because I love it. I'm the biggest fan of that. And then you can buy things at Home Depot while you're there.
You're not just a fan; you're a consumer.
That's right. That's right. I love it. It's done a lot for my son, and they've gotten to know my son over the years, and they greet him.
That's
and
great.
He's thrilled to be there. And
well, now I want to go.
I know.
First Saturday of every month.
First Saturday of every month. They just had it last Saturday, and of course the next one will be the first Saturday of August.
Wow, good to know.
And it's really cool.
Good.
So take the kids.
Yeah, I know my girls would be into it. They're into building and painting and stuff. Yeah.
They got the hammer gene.
They like to create. They got the creative gene. It's definitely not me.
Oh, that's wonderful. So, and building skills is something that's really important for all of our kids because eventually it is the hope for most of us, the vast majority, that our kids are going to have a job, have gainful employment.
Right, some type of employment as they get older.
Right, and I know a lot of families, and I've been talking to a lot of families that, you know, they're in that gap thing right now where it feels like their kids' services have run out, their child is 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, and they're saying, I don't know what to do. I feel like I've reached the end of the rope. I don't know what's available anymore. We've been talking about some different things like inclusion films. Joey Travolta does that. He does camps and trains kids how to do things within the film industry. But for a lot of people, they say, you know, I'd love for my kid to have a summer job. You know, I'd love for them to have an internship. How do I go about setting my kid up for success in doing this? How can we be preparing kids even when they're younger, and what do we do with those teenagers, Vince? Solve all of our problems. What do you say?
In 5 minutes, go. Well, again, we start with obviously it's going to vary depending on where the child is or where the teen or young adult, where we are in age, where they are with their level of skills and where their level of abilities are. But there's tons of opportunities out there. You had mentioned during the break, you know, internships, volunteer programs. Those are a great interim step to step into the workforce. And then we can kind of iron out some of the flaws or some of the deficits that might come up with that. How having to follow schedules and how to follow routines and how to follow, different multitasking and those types of things too. And internships and volunteer programs are very easy. Well, not easy, but they're great opportunities for these kids because it slowly integrates them into the workforce so that they can learn how to gain skills. They can learn how to gain their vocational skills and abilities so that when they do enter and actually have a paying job, they'll have those skills and abilities and that self-esteem that goes with it so that they can be successful.
I think that's a great idea. I hadn't even thought about that, honestly, Vince. I mean, it makes so much sense, but starting your kids out with a volunteer job, finding an organization that's meaningful in some way to them. and starting them out, because you're probably going to get people who are going to be a little bit more patient. They're going to have more time to do on-the-job training skills.
Right.
And because somebody has volunteered their time, they are going to take that time.
Right. And you would mention, following their interests. I mean, we have kids or, teens that are working at pet shelters, working at aquatic museums because they love, fish. They love pets, or they're working as interns in restaurants because they love to be, they just love food and they love to be there. And so people are, restaurants and families are taking them in and letting them help and letting them, do things like that. And again, it's experiencing them what's to come, but also it's something that they're interested in, something that they want to, they probably want to stay in.
Absolutely. And then eventually getting into a position where there's an internship.
Right.
And I know, I also do a radio show in addition to this show, and all of our interns on the show are people who are in college and on the spectrum. And it's been a really interesting education for me about how prepared I have to be, because I am, I'm not as prepared as I need to be on a regular basis. But it's been so rewarding having the opportunity to, it's like looking into the future, as far as I'm concerned, that, everybody is an individual, and I have really learned through this process, because before that I really only knew my child and a couple of other people's children. I really didn't know that many adults that were on the spectrum. And to get an opportunity, and there was only one girl, so I always want to say the young men and the one girl, to get to know them as individuals was quite a privilege.
Good.
And to see what skills they had and try to fit it into what would be useful for us on the radio show. It wasn't always successful, but it...
As with any employee.
Right.
Really, it's not
Everything
any
wasn't always a good fit for everybody in terms of their schedule, but it was really rewarding for me. And I have to say that I want to put out to everybody that if you have an opportunity, let's say your child's 4, but you have a business, you have an opportunity as a business owner to put it out there that you would be willing to take an intern. In some cases for absolutely no pay, because you're going to have to give a little back. You're going to get some amazing things.
Oh, absolutely.
Sometimes you're going to get kids that are computer whizzes.
Well, it's funny you brought that up, because I was thinking about that on the drive here today. You had mentioned that we're seeing the wave of the future. This is happening. It's happening on our fingers right now. There's a software company in Fountain Valley, California, that only hires adults that are on the high end of the autism spectrum or Asperger's.
Wow.
Let me tell you why. They're on time. They're rule-oriented. They're highly focused. Right?
Skilled.
They're highly skilled, and they're doing what they want to do. They're developing software games. Right? There's not a lot of social engagement that gets in the way. They know what to do. And they're hiring specifically, but not only because it's good for their bottom line, and obviously they're getting fantastic games out of it, but these are happy, living adults that are functioning. They're providing. They're great employees. They're great employees, but they're content. They're happy. I mean, there was I forget a politician that said, are these kids, talking about special education, are they going to ever be producing for our community? What are they going to produce for them? Here it is. It's right here. And again, the biggest thing for me is, at first you're kind of like, that's kind of, they're only doing this? Why? But when I hear that they're happy and they're content and they love it and they would never want to do anything else, that's all you're asking for, It helps the employer, it helps us as the commerce, and it's helping them be able to feel included. It's helping them be able to fill their lives. It's filling their lives up, and it's making them feel content, and it's fantastic.
And I think it's great, when we look at our kids and think, okay, so what are their skill sets? What are they really good at? Is there a way that this can be utilized? I had a mom.
How do we use that?
Yeah, I had a mom recently who said, my son is 17, and I want him to have a summer job, but I just don't, I can't just send him off to get a fast food job. He's not going to excel at that. And I said, well, what is he good at? And she said, well, you know what? I can send him up to clean his room, and he'll take all day to do it. He's slow at it, but he is so meticulous that everything is completely organized when he is done and completely dusted from top to bottom. And I said, wow, I would think that there's somebody out there that could use that service who isn't going to care if it takes all day, who'd be willing.
We've seen some offices in this building.
Yes,
have him come over. He can come here.
They could use that kind of thing, and then
Absolutely.
as a parent, you've got to, advocate for your child, and and I said, be creative,
Make
put
a
it
niche.
out there,
Make it.
make a niche, and even if you have to say, okay, you're going to try it out on a trial basis, and say, to an office that my son is going to come in and clean at 6 o'clock at night when nobody is there, and you don't care when he leaves,
Right.
and we're going to try it out for 2 days,
Right.
and if you like it, then you're going to pay this, but for 2 days we're going to do it for free. See if the child has the ability to persevere, or if it's just a one-day kind of thing,
Right. Right. And you see that all the time. I mean, you see it on the news. You see, people who are, the organizers, or the closet consultants, and they come up with some creative names. And really, all they are is just people who are organized.
Right.
They come, they organize.
I love it.
They can,
Right.
put things in right places, and you're like, oh, it
That
cleans up
works.
your clutter.
Right.
Why can't we make that niche? Why, and I think that's fantastic that you talked to her about that, because that's what we can do. We can find things that out there and make it productive. It could be, again, it can start as a volunteer. It can start as an internship, like you had mentioned, and let's see if it works. But why not? Because it's out there. It could be in janitorial services, or it could just be, this is a person who will help you organize. They'll come in, they'll organize your office in 2 days. You pay them whatever, and you're done.
Right.
And it's a part-time gig.
Yeah.
But this is what they do, and they go around and help organize all the offices. And to be honest with you, I think that there's a ton of people that could be successful for.
We all know somebody.
On
I have a garage.
Right, both on the receiving end and both on the giving end.
Yes, I have a
For
garage
sure.
that needs to be organized in the worst possible way.
But niches, I think that's important to bring up, because you're looking at what the kids can do and how they can be successful. Sometimes it might be creating something, creating a job, or creating opportunities, and sometimes it's just picking the right job. It's picking.
Absolutely.
I have one one of my boys now is is late teens, and he works at a grocery store, and he knows how to bag, he knows how to do his stuff, he's been told the rules, he knows how to do it, he's got his speed going, he's great, he's a great employee, and he likes it.
Yeah.
And that's great. That's all he needs to do is he goes, he's pleasant, he enjoys it, he enjoys what he does, he knows the routines, he knows when to get the carts, he knows when to restock, he knows all that kind of stuff. And you know what? He's producing. They love him because he's efficient. He loves it because he's wanted.
Yeah.
That's all you can ask for.
There's a young man at one of our local grocery stores that it's not autism, but there's clearly differently abled. And I remember when he started working there when he was like 17, and somebody was just a little patient and outlined everything. He's now an assistant manager.
Yeah.
He is so good at that job. And I know when I come into the grocery store, if he sees that there's more than 4 people in a lane, he's got another register open. He, memorizes all these different things in the store, upsells constantly. Everybody's thrilled to see him. He just is a go-getter. And I think, he's going to go on to be the manager of a store and do really well, because he has found something that he's really good at, and somebody was patient with him in the beginning.
It's the perfect example of what you said, differently abled. We're using their abilities and making it successful.
Yeah.
Everybody's differently abled. You, me, our children, they're all differently abled. And it's finding their abilities and making those successful. He can memorize things. He has that memory and knows the rules and follows rules and follows structure like no other. Now when things go chaotic, maybe that's harder for him. But that doesn't happen very often, so he uses his abilities to make his niche for him. And that's fantastic.
It's really inspirational. But I think the key is, as parents, to advocate for our kids and to let other people know it when your child, look at what your child is good at, help them to make the niche, and let other people know. Let your family and friends and business owners know that your child is available for that. And if you have a business or something that you need help with, consider putting it out there, because you could benefit greatly from having somebody and know that at the end of the day you made a difference for somebody and help them make their way into the job market. Absolutely.
It's a
wonderful thing.
And there's tons of opportunities out there, even working at the local library to working at gas stations to working, supermarkets, restaurants, pet stores. I mean, everybody can use an extra hand.
And it's never too young, really, to have them volunteer in some way.
Depending on what their abilities are. Yeah, absolutely.
That's something I really hadn't thought about, that I got to get my son volunteering for somebody. That's a great idea, Vince. That's wonderful. Thank you so much for being here with us. I always appreciate it when you come by. It's always a treat. And we'll look forward to hearing more about what's going on with you and how you are helping to better serve families here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders.
Absolutely.
I know you do a great job.
And as soon as we can get that off the ground, we'll be in here promoting it.
Yes, absolutely. We'll look forward to hearing about that. Okay, we're going to take
take a break, and we're going to come back to close out the show, so stick with us. We're here today with Sarah Cho, who is the managing supervisor of the CARD Fresno office, and it's a special treat for us to have her with us today. Yeah. And we're going to be asking her to talk to us about working with children who are nonverbal. So when a child is not speaking, are we saying that they're non-vocal or non-verbal?
The correct terminology is non-vocal.
Okay.
Because when we're saying vocal, vocal means sound. So sound is being emitted.
Okay.
So verbal means that the child is able to communicate to another person that they need something, they have desires, they have wants, and a verbal response might be handing a picture.
Okay.
It might also be a sign. Might also be pressing a button to ask for something.
Okay.
Those would all be considered verbal behavior. But if they don't have speech, we might say that they're non-vocal. So imagine then if you have a child who's not developing speech typically, they have no way to tell their parent what they need, you're going to see frustration levels increase. And if I don't have a way to appropriately get my point across, I'm going to start developing some really bad excessive behaviors to communicate. Right. So that's when we start to see the noncompliance, the tantrums, the aggression, even self-injurious behaviors emerge. We're going to use really short and concise and clear speech. Pair it with a gesture. And then when the child starts responding, immediately praise. Right. Immediately give a reward. So then that way the child is starting to understand, I got it. I'm understanding what she's wanting me to do. At the same time as working on receptive instructions, we do need to teach the child also a way for them to communicate too. Right. So we're going to start working on very basic requesting behavior. So they're able to request for things. And so the two kind of go hand in hand.
If there are no sounds, then maybe we start with signs.
You could start with signs, or you could start with an icon. As a parent, you're going to know your kid best in the sense that you're going to know kind of what they like. If you have a kiddo who likes to look at pictures, who likes to look at books, maybe an icon is going to be something that would be preferred, and they would get really good at giving it. If you have a child who is, you're like, wow, you know, they have really great fine motor. Maybe they can already string beads. Maybe they can do a shape sorter. You know, the ability to manipulate their hands and their fingers is pretty solid. Maybe you might want to work on some very basic signs.
Okay, so taking whatever the strength is and running with that.
Absolutely. So let's say that you do an icon or you do a sign. Both of those forms of communication have been linked to development of expressive speech. So, you know, if that's something that we're starting with today because we need to get through today, that doesn't mean that that's what we're going to end up doing tomorrow.
Welcome back to Autism Live. Such a thrill to have Vince Redmond in the studio with us. What a wonderful resource he is. And it's really got me thinking about, you know, because I can get bogged down in the anger about, you know, why do we have to be careful about who we say to what, and why can't everybody just, you know, and that's not useful. But things we can do for our kids to help our kids. I always say I want to be the most effective, most efficient member on my son's team, or at least one of them, right? If I can't be a rock star, I at least want to be a roadie on this team and make sure that I am adding to the greater good of the team. And if, you know, this whole idea of having our children start volunteering. I know I shared the other day that my son and I went into a store because one of the things that we're trying to do this summer, I am a terrible, I never took typing. I'm a terrible typist. I'm so slow. It's appalling. And I have so much need to write things, and I want to get so much more done. I want to be more efficient, more effective, right? And if I can type faster, I'll have more time to do more things, right? And I want my son to be a good typist. As he goes into 4th grade, each one of the students gets a netbook and they can type away, and I think that's really going to help him because he has so much he wants to say, but he has been hampered by the fact that he has to write it, and that's kind of slow for him. So I said, I really want for us to get a jump on this. And we went to a store to try to get a typing computer program, went into the store, asked somebody at the front of the store and said, where would we find the computer typing programs? And it was a manager, no less. And he kind of, you know, did one of those where he just sort of semi-pointed in a direction because he was busy chatting up the girl working at the cash register. And my son and I walked away, and I was talking to my son about, you know, that wasn't very good customer service. What should he have done? And we talked about all that. Got over to the area. There was nobody there to help us. We had to wait and go and find somebody. Finally had this younger guy who's just one of the workers there, and we asked him, where would a computer program having to do with typing be? And he said, you know, I really don't think we carry anything like that in the store. I think you can order it from our online store, but I don't think we carry that kind of stock. Let me check. And he looked around and he said, you know, there just isn't anything here, and I'm pretty familiar with the stock, and I haven't seen anything like that in a very long time. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to refer you to our website. Well, now I'm 68 kinds of ticked, and we left, and as we walked out, I stopped and said, are you a manager, to the person who had gone, you know, over here, and made it clear to him in front of my son that I thought that he had done a really poor job, and that I was going to be going down the street to get the typing program. Did, and the whole way there we talked, my son and I, about what would have been the appropriate thing to do for customer service. Got to the new store, walked you know, towards the computer programs. We were stopped by a young woman who said, welcome to our store. Is there anything I can help you to find? I said, yes, as a matter of fact. I'd like to know where your computer programs are for typing. And she said, oh, they're over here, but let me take you over there. What I had just said to my son was the better customer service thing. We went over and she said, you know, we have these 3 different programs. This is not my area, and I'd like to get somebody over here who knows more about these individual programs. Do you have a minute? And I'll call somebody over. I said, you know what, really I don't. And we saw that there was a SpongeBob typing program. I'm all about reinforcement. I knew that would be more reinforcing to my son, so I said, I think we're going to take this one. Went up to the register, and now the manager comes over and says, hey, I understand that you were looking at the typing programs, but somebody was helping you who wasn't from that particular area. Did you find what you needed? Or I said, you know, actually we did find what we needed, and I want to thank you because we had a really good customer service experience here. We didn't have one at the last store we were at, and detailed what had happened. And again, talked about this all with my son as we went to the car about what good customer service is. And I said, well, you know, why should the person have done this? And he said, well, the customer is always right. And by the way, I do think that, you know, while I've been trying to educate him on good customer service for the day when he has a job, I would tell you quite honestly, and it chagrins me to admit this, but he's gotten as much from me as he has from SpongeBob. That I'm not the biggest SpongeBob fan in the world, but I will tell you that one of the things that it does teach and that my son has learned is that SpongeBob is all about good customer service. He's a very good employee, sometimes too good of an employee, and that's what some of the humor in the show is about, but he's a very conscientious employee, and that has taught my son all these wonderful customer service things. In any case, I think it's so important that we start preparing our kids for their jobs well before the week before we're going to send them out to apply for jobs. And I love this idea of Vince's to have them volunteer. I think that that is an awesome idea, and I can't wait to go home and talk with my son about where he would like to volunteer to help. I think that's just an awesome, awesome thing that more of us can do to get our children job ready. Very, very exciting. And it doesn't have to be long-term or a long amount of time. I'm thinking about this just on Sunday. My son and I went to the community garden. When you have a community garden spot, you're responsible to go and help out on 3 work days. And he came with me. It's a 2-hour shift. And I knew he wasn't going to make it the 2 hours, right? He's 9 years old, and I knew that that was not happening. But he did help out for a good half hour in the beginning, and then I sent him to take a break, and then he helped out for at least 20 minutes towards the end, which not bad, right? But I imagine if I had him volunteer someplace that was a little bit more reinforcing than picking weeds in the community garden, you know, that's more reinforcing to mom. And even I was going, all right, when is this 2 hours up? But a really inspirational thought to have for all of us. us. I want to remind you that we've got a lot going on here the rest of the week, even though we're only having a short week here. Tomorrow at 10 o'clock, we're going to be joined by Evelyn Gould, who is going to be with us talking about parent training, how we as parents can get the training we need to be the most effective, most efficient parent that we can be on this journey through autism using ABA, and also helping us to understand some of the obstacles we're going to meet with parent training, some of the obstacles that we're going to have in starting ABA in our home. You know, some of the things that don't get talked about that are really the emotional and financial impact on parents and how it needs to be taken into consideration, because this is a very real thing. And it requires a great deal of patience and fortitude. And we have to be mindful of that as we're starting these programs with our children, because this is not a sprint, it's a marathon. So that's tomorrow at 10 o'clock. During the 11 o'clock hour, we're going to be doing Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I mentioned that Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson won't be able to join us tomorrow, but we do have a pre-taped interview with filmmaker Vena Tiero. She is an amazing young woman who really went through hardship. She's a single mom, has got 2 young boys on the spectrum. Her first son was diagnosed with autism, and then her younger son, by the time her first son was getting treatment, her younger son had descended into autism, raising them by herself, and has made a really important documentary called My Tiero Boys. It's breathtaking. I've seen the documentary. Vena is a very brave, very honest, outspoken woman and a breath of fresh air, let's say that. And Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson and I were able to sit down with her, and we're going to show you that interview tomorrow during Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. You won't want to miss that. And by the way, on Thursday, we also have 2 guests. We have author Richard, I believe it's Strip. I hope I'm saying that right. We'll ask him on Thursday. He's going to be with us at 10:20 on Thursday, talking about his book, Mommy, I Wish I Could Tell You What They Did to Me in School Today. It's really an amazing book. It's a must-have. And we'll talk to Richard about what inspired this amazing, pivotal book on Thursday. We're also going to be giving away a copy of his book on Thursday, so you're going to want to tune in and join us then. And we also are going to have our special guest, Angela Persicki, who is the Assistant Director of the Autism Research Group. She's going to be joining us on a weekly basis now, talking about research and autism. We'll be thrilled to have her with us on Thursday as well at 11 o'clock. You won't want to miss that. Lots of exciting things. As this show ends, I want to remind you that the conversation always continues. There are lots of ways for you to get in touch with us, either during the show, after the show, anytime, day or night. I'm going to ask Matt to start to cycle through some of those different things. You can email us, you can phone us, you can Skype us, you can Facebook us, you can tweet with us. There are lots of ways for you to be watching the show. I know some of you are watching us on autism-live.com. That is our home. We will always be here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We are live, though, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. until noon. That's Pacific Standard Time. But we will always be airing shows here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But there are many other ways that you can watch us. You can be watching us on Blip TV. You can be watching us on YouTube. We are a free download on iTunes, and we are also available on Ustream. So lots of different ways to watch us. If there is a way that you would like to watch us that you don't see on that list flashing before you on the screen, please let us know, because we want to be available to you in the format that you would find most conducive. I want to remind you that all the different ways that we provide information are free to you, and I think that that's a really important distinction to make. Ask your questions, give us your suggestions, tell us what's kicking your can this week, what's making it really hard for you, because we want to help you with that. Whether it's helping you point in a direction of being able to find some funding for the services, or helping you to find the answers that you need for the behaviors that your child is exhibiting and how to use these tools creatively, we've got those suggestions for you and can hook you up with the experts. We're going to be back tomorrow at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, live right here. And until then, please give your kiddos a hug from me. Bye-bye for now.